Hello, everyone. For starters, welcome to the latest edition of the Nick Files. I'm your host, Nick Muley. For starters, I do apologize that I am starting about 15 minutes later than I originally was going to start because I was having some technical issues and I'm still trying to get used really to know how to use EV Mux. Real quick, just before we get started, let me see what somebody here said to me. Hang on one second. Sorry about that. But anyways, yeah, I was having a couple technical issues practically. Pickle Tom, what's up? Hey, where the hell are you? I thought you'd be coming on today. um, well, let's see here. See, because I'm still waiting on a few others that are going to be showing up. I'm also planning on sharing this out because there's a few other folks that would like to check this out. So give me one second here while I'm looking. And give me a second here while I get this ready. Okay, everything broadcasting is correctly, so that's a good sign. Oh, that's weird. Oh no, now the comments are showing up. Hello, Nicola. Good to see you. Hello, Nigel. Good to see you here too. Yeah. Hey, what's up, Kate? How are you? But I gotta say though, anyways, it's definitely great to be back, even though it's just temporary of what I'm putting together because I got a perfect slideshow that literally, I'm not even joking. I literally just finished up just minutes before. That was another reason why. That is another reason why I was running a little bit late. Hey, Joanne, I related to Christopher Milan. I don't, I don't know not really. I don't know what that has to do with anything. But yeah, today we're going to be focusing on a very important event that took place. It was actually yesterday, but took place exactly a century ago, which we're going to be focusing on the Great Tri State Tornado of March 18th, 1925. And it's a very fascinating story. Honestly, let's see here. Mule. Yeah. Okay, I guess if that's the way how it's pronounced. I mean, hey Lois, joined, but no, it's no big deal, Lois. I absolutely understand. I know your voice has not been really the best, but just rest it out as best you can. And yeah, please share this out because I really do appreciate it if you can. Um, Let me see now. Geez, now. Oh yeah. Now let's see here. Now everybody's starting to message me. This all had to happen while I was about to go live. Okay, so yeah, we're going to be talking about. I mean, this particular slideshow and this tornado that, as you guys will see when I start up with the slideshow, it to this day remains the deadliest single tornado in U.S. history, if not all of North America, because no other tornado has ever equaled to what this one had gone through back in 1925. And I just got word, I think one of my show is going to be joining in just a second. So let's see here. Um, yeah, and this is kind of strange too with one of the other show hosts Kate just contacted me. She was going to be on too, but strangely enough, in spite of what I'm going to be presenting throughout most of today's, it has been for the last several days. We've actually been under pretty much a good portion of the U.S. has been affected by several tornado and severe thunderstorm warnings. So I find it kind of really strange how here I'm talking about the most destructive and deadliest tornado in U.S. history, but at the same time, 100 years later, we're getting something very similar to this. Maybe not as lethal or as deadly, but it's still in some way, shape, or form. Um, I find maybe it's just pure coincidence, but I think I find it kind of strange, weird that it's all happening, around this time. It's kind of hard to describe. Very quickly, as just before I'm about to get started, let me just share this out. And while I'm doing that too, that will also give the opportunity because again, I believe Samantha is going to be coming on. So while I'm waiting for her, I'm going to send this out. So bear with me for just a second here, guys. Oh, wait, we just. Hey, what's up, Samantha?
Hey there, how are you?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Yeah, so far so good, Nick. So far so good.
That's good. Good. You got here just in time because I haven't gotten started yet. I'm just about to share this out. So just bear. Have you shared it out yourself or?
I did actually share it out to a few people.
Okay.
See, I've also told them. I don't know if this is going out through the NW network as well, but I did tell a few people to look that up tonight. So we may get a few people that come on in. Let's see if I can.
Yeah, I tried broadcasting this on the network, but on the NW network, but unfortunately, it was not working. So I couldn't I couldn't get it broadcasted. So I don't know if you or I think Lois might have also done it. She'll probably be sharing it out on the page.
Mm, that'll be good.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
just just finishing shit out. It's a little bit difficult sometimes when you have to, when you're hosting, you have to share this out at the same time. Um,
Yeah, that's exactly like I've been looking around like where do I share? Where do I share? And I'm like, it doesn't show me. Okay, cool thing.
okay, hang on. Yeah, I was just trying to send this out to one other page. Ironically enough, one of the pages that I was going to be sending this out to was for an author who wrote a book about this, and I asked, "Do you mind if I share this on your page?" She was thrilled by it, and if I'm able to get this sent out, we might be able to get quite a number of viewers watching from that page. But for whatever reason now, let me see if I could try to do this on the computer. For whatever reason, it is not
Yeah,
working. It's not working.
sometimes it's easier on the computer, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna try to do next because it's just getting kind of frustrating.
Yeah, I know. It's the same with StreamYard as well. When we were trying to like when I was trying to share it to people which watch Truth Beyond Paranormal, and I'm trying to share it and it's not fucking doing anything, and I'm like, great. So guys, you never see it. Oh,
Just doesn't want just doesn't do what you want it to do. So that's the thing that really sucks here. Okay, I'm gonna try to do this one final time for this page.
yeah, that's
Uh,
fair. I'm going to get my random shit that I wrote down because I nearly forgot that
yeah,
bit.
I was gonna ask.
Yeah. Uh,
Hey, Nigel, good to see you.
do I have? Let me see if I can. Oh, that just flew across the room. That's helpful. I was like, oh no! Oh, I brought the thermal thing as well. How have I done that?
So while I'm trying to get this taken care of, were you able to write more details down from your research that you did, or just out of curiosity?
I did do a little bit more research. Yeah, I'm going to bring it up on my laptop as well to see if I can get anything else. But no, I did. I did find that there was in the main area where it touched down in, and it really like kind of devastated the whole place. I did find out that there was actually a couple who had noticed that there was an individual that came through to them who was communicating with them about the fact that they had actually been part like they have actually were part of what happened and they were communicating with them. I don't know through what tools. It didn't actually say what tools or anything that were used for inside the paranormal for that. But they said that they did get communication from like a whole family of people, which is quite interesting. So I was like, that's pretty cool. So I can sort of, I'll see if I can get that back up again. It didn't really go into very much detail about it.
Okay, I couldn't get the link sent to this page, so I'm gonna try to do. I have one final option. It's not working through Facebook, but because I'm also broadcasting this on YouTube, damn it, see it happened again. I don't know why it's not sending. It's just really
Yeah,
strange.
I've also got some really lovely freaking echoing shit going on. Oh, could be why. Is that any better? Kind of.
Yeah, it's sort of. Here, I'm just gonna tell this page where to look for us because I'm starting to run out of options.
Yeah, it's easier that way, isn't it? Can you get on?
Well, good thing is I'm already on one of the network, things network page, so this better work. I swear to God. Yes. Okay. Finally. First video that shows up. Okay. So hopefully that should work. But I think we're all set. But oh my God, that was. Oh man, you gotta love with EV Mux. Hey, what's up, Tom? Good to see you. Hello, Sean. So, anyways, and also,
Hello.
one other thing, because I'm not only just the fact that we're about to get started, I'm also glad that you're here because I've never really used a slideshow on EV Mux before. So, I want you to tell me if you're able to see the slideshow itself.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, no, see
That's
again.
absolutely fine. Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, now oh my God, where's the oh man. Oh, share screen. Right in front of me. I did not even see that. Okay, so let me know if you're able to see this. You see a title or anything, or
Not so far, no.
okay, hang on. Let me go back to the studio. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. All right. So
Yeah, I
this is
see
what
it
I
now.
was.
Let me see if
So I may
I.
have to. Yeah. So I may have to do this like this full screen probably. So as a result. Oh wait. Sharing your screen without sharing your systems out. No, it does. It does show that the microphone's working.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so far.
Okay. Well, whatever. I mean, as long as people are able to hear me, I mean, that's all. Oh, wait a minute. Actually, I can do this too, by the way, speaking of which, because this is how I used to do this with StreamYard. Oops, did not mean to.
Sorry.
Wait,
What happened? Right.
see how camera tricks.
Yeah, you're like they're all over the freaking place. It's like,
All right, this is
oh,
probably
go around in circles.
yeah. Okay, yeah. Sean, yeah, Sean said that he could see in here. Okay, great. All right, this is basically what I kind of more wanted us to the side and the presentation, as being the main screen. So this works out perfectly. So now we got all that out of the way. Without further ado, let's get started. So before now, obviously, as I said before, this slideshow marks. I'm kind of making this as sort of my own commemoration for the 100th anniversary of the Great Tri-State Tornado of March 18th, 1925. Just before we get started a little on this tornado, we're going to talk quickly about a similar event that occurred, ironically enough, just a few years ago, just kind of as like a introduction precursor before we get into the main subject. So let's talk about the most recent storm, December 10th, 2021. Throughout the evening hours, a large and destructive tornado struck areas in and around the cities and communities of Monette and Leachville in Arkansas, Braggadocio and Haiti in Missouri, and Tiptonville and Sandburg in Tennessee, killing 8 people and injuring 16 others. The tornado was the second strongest and third deadliest of a massive tornado outbreak of December 10th to 11th, 2021, which I will say very quickly, I remember watching this live. I'll never forget just how bad this was. But on this particular tornado, the tornado reached peak intensity twice. The first time east of Braggadocio and the second time in Tiptonville, leading the National Weather Service to assign a rating of low-end EF4 on the enhanced Fujita scale with maximum wind speeds estimated 170 miles per hour. Early estimates suggested that the tornado family, identified by some media outlets as a quad-state tornado due to the storm's long track extending into Kentucky and its similarity to another tornado from 100 years ago, the 219-mile tri-state tornado of 1925.
Oh God.
What's that?
Oh my God, I've just seen the image just pop up.
Oh, did it show up before that, or?
No, I just saw it. Yeah, it looked really bad. But
Yeah.
It didn't look good, did it?
Yeah, well, that's your thing. I put a lot of pictures. I mean, whenever I make these slideshows, I really try to go deep down in detail, really to kind of give that vision of the past, and also kind of like a historical society, if you will. So
Yeah, no, that's great.
yeah, absolutely. Now, although this was the introduction, I should have mentioned this earlier. There are 2 other historic tornadoes I like to talk about. These were the ones that were the precursors, and at that time, the deadliest tornadoes prior to the 1925 tri-state tornado. So the earliest one that I have here, this one goes back from May 7th of 1840, which was known at that time, which is known as the Great Natchez Tornado, which was a deadly and powerful. The tornado may have been an F4 to F5 tornado that hit Natchez, Mississippi, which this is a sketch of what happened. While officially unrated, it is retrospectively estimated to have been at least a violent F4 tornado on the Fujita scale. Its 35-mile long, 1,000-yard wide path was marked by severe damage and uncertain estimates of casualties because though many enslaved Africans, unfortunately, because this was the South, obviously, during the height of slavery, possibly it was probably not numbering in the hundreds, reportedly died on plantations in Louisiana, but were not accounted for. I mean, the best way I can describe this one is that the Natchez tornado of 1840 was probably the most perfect example of a storm being at the wrong place at the wrong time. Yeah, I mean, the tornado literally entered the Mississippi River a mile wide to the point where the tornado itself isn't over a mile wide. So it encompassed the entire river and the town, just completely destroying it. Yeah, I just forgot. I just had it here. Yeah, mile wide at a point where the river, encompassed the entire river and a good part of Natchez. At this time, I mean, during this one, the tornado killed at least 317 people, and at least 109 were injured. The final death toll was 48 on land, with 47 deaths in Natchez and 1 in Vidalia on the river, mostly from the sinking of flatboats. It's the only tornado in history in which it killed more people than it injured. It was also the second deadliest tornado in United States history. Now this. So I meant to say there's 3 of them. This I added because this was quite an important piece of history on this. On August 28th, 1884, a tornado outbreak, including a family of at least 5 strong tornadoes, affected portions of the Dakota Territory within present-day South Dakota. Among them was the first known tornadoes to have been photographed, an estimated once again, F4 on the Fujita scale that occurred near Howard and exhibited multiple vortices. So what you're seeing right now is often regarded as the first ever photograph of a tornado.
Wow, that is freaking awesome.
Yeah. And I know some people would think to a degree it almost looks more like a sketch or a drawing, actually.
Yeah.
But no, it is actually it's actually a real photograph. That is not a sketch or a reconstruction of one. That is the real
And that
picture
was
right now.
in wait, and that was at that time, was it? So that was in 1800s.
Yeah, 1884.
Wow. Well, they've
Hey Joe.
captured that really well for something in the 1800s. I mean, of course, coming from a background of photography, yeah, they've captured that brilliantly. I don't think that we would be able to do that now, to be honest.
Absolutely. In fact, it says the photographer was F.N. Robinson, who observed the tornado
Oh,
in the town of Howard, about 1.9 miles east of the storm track. Now, there was also another photographer from Huron, excuse me, who took multiple photographs of the same tornado an hour earlier. However, unlike this photograph, these ones were lost or destroyed during the engraving process. So, in a way, they've essentially, yeah, we don't have any copies of it. They've essentially been lost to time.
that's sad.
It is. The tornado obliterated a home near Forestburg and killed at least 30 cattle. One person was injured. Two more tornadoes may have also been involved. Now, contemporary records and survivors' recollections indicate that the storms were F3 or F4 intensity on the Fujita scale, but understandably, they cannot currently be officially verified as official records begin in 1950. Now, the final precursor tornado I have just before we get to the tri-state was another one that occurred on May 27th, 1896. The 1896 East St. Louis tornado, which in some areas at that time, it was still referred to as a cyclone. So it was known as the Great Cyclone when this one hit. It was once again a historic tornado that caused severe damage to downtown St. Louis, Missouri, and East St. Louis, Illinois at around 5 p.m. This tornado was the most notable of a major tornado outbreak sequence across the central United States, which produced several other large, long-track violent tornadoes and continued across the eastern United States the following day. The St. Louis tornado killed at least 255 people, injured over 1,000 others, and caused more than $10 million in damage, which is equivalent to $378 million in today's dollars in about 20 minutes. More than 5,000 people were left homeless and lost all of their possessions. The hardest hit areas of the city were the fashionable Lafayette Square and Compton Heights neighborhoods in East St. Louis, as well as the poorer Mill Creek Valley. But then it got worse. Choked with debris and power, the tornado gathered power as it crossed the Mississippi River. Now, although the official death toll is 255, you have to think if it crossed the Mississippi River, there was bound to be boats,
Yeah.
So,
Oh.
yeah, so as a possible reason, I mean, it's been recently discovered that there's a possibility that an additional 100 people died in that tornado on Mississippi River boats, and the bodies were never found.
Oh no.
Yeah. Buildings lost more than their roofs. The walls were ripped down and the debris carried away. This one obviously remains the third deadliest tornado in United States history. This also represents the signature of the most violent tornadoes, an F4 or 5 on the Fujita scale, which, I'm sure we probably know, a lot of us already know about the Fujita scale. An F0, or what's known as an EF, because we got the enhanced Fujita scale now. EF0 tornado or F1 tornado will blow down a limb from a tree, or knock down a roof, from a house. That's on one end of the scale. On the other end of the scale, obviously, is where you have a house completely swept away clean, at a 5.
Mm.
So the F5 is both the rarest and most destructive of all storms. Almost 30 years would go by before America would see another catastrophic F5. So now we get to the main part of the slideshow. As devastating as these tornadoes were, no American tornado has ever, or if not even, no American tornado has ever surpassed the death toll inflicted by the tri-state tornado of
Yeah.
March 18th, 1925. To this day, it remains the deadliest single tornado on record for the United States. 695 fatalities from that single tornado. And unfortunately, the part of the reason why it was such a high death toll was tornado warnings, as we know them today, did not exist in 1925. And as a matter of fact, the U.S. Weather Bureau did not even like to use the word tornado or hurricane. They really didn't have the scientific means to see tornadic storms shaping up, and too many uses of the word would be the equivalent of crying wolf to the general public. Almost no one knew it was coming, as not only I should have actually a little mistyped there. I should have merged these two instead. But like I said, there were no official tornado warnings issued from the U.S. Weather Bureau at the time, as it was a concern that it would cause the public to panic, understandably. So as a result, weather forecasters and meteorologists were forbidden to use the word tornado or hurricane. The Bureau's forecast for March 18th instead called for rains and strong shifting winds to affect the mid-Mississippi Valley. Perhaps this was something of a euphemism for severe weather expected. But since no tornado forecasts were issued in those days, people living in tornado-prone regions like southern Illinois usually developed a good sense for what they called cyclone weather. So I'm just trying to keep up with all the comments. But even that powerful second sense, born from years of close observation of the weather, wasn't much help to most people on March 18th, 1925. Tornadoes generally travel from southwest to northeast by prevailing winds, and the tri-state tornado roared in that direction through southern Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana. And it's still an unbelievable path, that how long it lasted. The path is a record 219 miles, although recent records have shown that it may have actually been 10 to 15 miles longer than previously thought, bringing the full path to 234 miles, which no other tornado has ever taken that long of a path as this one has.
No.
Modern meteorological reanalysis has suggested that the extremely long path length and lifespan reported in historical accounts are perhaps more plausibly attributed to multiple independent tornadoes belonging to a tornado family rather than a single continuous tornado, which does make more sense. Although not officially rated by NOAA, the tri-state tornado is recognized by most experts, such as Tom Grzillas and Ted Fujita, as an F5 tornado, the maximum rating issued on the Fujita scale, which it is also believed its winds were probably up as high as 300 miles per hour. Now, here's another I'm going to throw up something out that a lot of people really don't know about, and it's kind of bizarre. Another strange thing that occurred with this tornado was the area, because for most people that don't know this, the crescent of Illinois, south of St. Louis, has long been referred to as Little Egypt. Now, anyone who's ever read the Bible attentively knows very well that Egypt does not get good press. It's a region of darkness, superstition, and oppression. But in the 1920s, the Egypt of southern Illinois wasn't getting good press either. It was the northern stronghold of the Ku Klux Klan, which was at its most prominent throughout the country during that decade. Local Klansmen were known for wearing their white robes and hoods to church. Even more brazen were Little Egypt's gangsters and bootleggers. Their roadhouses roared, and so did their guns. In the central part of Williamson, murders and crimes were so frequent that it became known as Bloody Williamson. Some would interpret the horrible events that were about to take place as a judgment upon the signs of Little Egypt. Divine vengeance, it seemed, was kicking up in the wind. There were also plenty of honest working people in this part of America. It was the age of prohibition, jazz music, and silent films. Art Deco was just coming into vogue. Farmers soldiered on despite hard times. The recovery of European farming from World War I had made crop prices fall everywhere else, but coal mining was booming. Men who earned a living in the mines counted themselves lucky, particularly on March 18th of 1925. They couldn't do much better on that day than to be underground in a mine shaft. So, just real quick, during a 6-year review study of the tri-state tornado published in 2013, new surface and upper air data was obtained, and meteorological reanalysis was utilized, adding significantly to knowledge of the subnatic and even mesoscale background of the events. The late winter to spring of so this is basically kind of like what the forecast pretty much was prior before the tornado developed on March 18th. The late winter to early spring of 1925 was warmer and drier than normal over much of the central United States. There apparently was persistent ridging in the western U.S. with a troughing pattern over the central U.S. The extratropical cyclone that set the subnatic stage for the tornado and additional outbreak was centered over northwestern Montana at 7 a.m. on March 17th. Meanwhile, a diffuse area of surface low pressure was centered near Denver, Colorado, in association with a lee trough. Occluded fronts extended from Hudson Bay southwestward into the northern plain states and into the lee trough. The subnatic cyclone moved southeastward across the mountain states to eastern Colorado. A warm front stretched along the Gulf Coast, separating warm, moist air from cool, showery weather with areas of fog that extended from Texas to the Carolinas. A well-mixed early-season continental tropical air mass existed over West Texas and northern New Mexico. To the east of this hot, dry air, buoyant maritime tropical air was advecting from the Gulf of Mexico. Simultaneously, a mid to upper level shortwave trough likely approached the northwest coast of the U.S. and moved rapidly through the persistent ridge, then digging southeastward across the Great Basin and central Rocky Mountains and emerging in the plains over Colorado. This initiated what was known as a Colorado low cyclogenesis.
Whatever that was.
Yeah, I have trouble with some of these words sometimes.
No, I think we all would, to be honest.
Yeah. Now, at 7 a.m. on March 18th, the surface air. This was again another weather map of the conditions that were occurring, and it's also not just associated with the tornado that developed, but also because I'm going to explain more about this in just about another minute or two of several other what was basically an additional outbreak of tornadoes that occurred that day. So at 7 a.m. on March 18th, the surface low pressure area at approximately 1003 HPA moved to far northeastern Oklahoma, while the warm front shot north into the circulation, where the front then extended eastward. Hold on one second. I just got to send this out. I don't know why this link wasn't sent out. Give me 1 second here.
That's all right. That's all good.
Okay. There we go. All right. A maritime polar cold front draped southwestward across eastern Texas with a dry line forming directly to the south of the low. The open shortwave, likely somewhat negatively tilted, was continuing to approach from the northwest, and an apparent outflow boundary moved just to the south of the warm front over northeastern Arkansas and northwestern Tennessee. Several weak pressure troughs were traversing the cool sector over the north central U.S. Surface temperatures in the warm sector near the dry line and warm front ranged from 60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and the dew point was 55 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, with higher values farther south and increasing over time as the deepening low pressure area continued to pull up air from the Gulf of Mexico. This resulted in unstable air and lower cloud bases, or low LCL heights, which is favorable to tornado genesis from southeastern Kansas to Kentucky and Indiana. Early morning showers and thunderstorms north of the low and warm front cooled and stabilized that air, retarding northward advancement of the front and led to a sharp contrast in temperature from north to south. Such baroclinic zones are also associated with tornadic wind storms ahead of the surface dry line, which are uncommon as far east as the Mississippi River. An apparent dry punch of air aloft served to further increase instability. Concurrently, a capping inversion likely suppressed storms throughout the warm sector, leaving the tri-state supercell undisturbed by nearby convection. By 12 p.m., the deepening surface low was centered over south central Missouri. The shortwave axis was moving easterly and oriented over eastern Oklahoma, and the dry line was rapidly advancing eastward directly south of the low as the warm front, situated due to east of the low, slowly shifted northward. Morning clouds cleared by midday across much of the tri-state tornado's eventual path. A pronounced pressure trough extended northeast of the low and signaled its future track as a pre-funneled trough formed southeast of the low ahead of the dry line. A bulge in the dry line may have also been forming slightly south of the low, and southerly to southeasterly surface winds were backing and increasing with time throughout the warm sector. The tri-state supercell formed in a highly favorable area just ahead of the triple point where the cold front, warm front, and dry line met. The supercell initiated very near the surface low and moved east-northeastward, faster than the low, such that the storm gradually deviated east of the low's track. The supercell remained near the sweet spot for a long, prolonged period as it also traveled near the highly baroclinic warm front, likely just across the cool side of the boundary for several hours. Now, thunderstorm activity began just after midnight as several cells erupted to produce large hail across eastern Oklahoma and Kansas, as well as a brief tornado that damaged several structures west of Coffeyville. Light rain broke out shortly before daybreak across much of Missouri, Illinois, and the southern half of Indiana, creating a pool of rain-cooled air to the north of the advancing warm fronts. By midday, the surging warm front had brought temperatures into the middle and upper 60s. Plumes of unstable air near the surface began to rise into the atmosphere, eventually bumping into the warm dry cap. Just minutes after noon, near the triple point where the warm front, cold front, and dry line merged in south central Missouri, a lone thunderstorm burst into the sky. Whipped and twisted by the strong wind shear throughout the atmosphere, the thunderstorm quickly became supercellular as it raced northeastward. Now, another thing that should be noted about this tornado is this tornado was part of a larger tornado outbreak with several other destructive tornadoes the same day, also with additional ones not just in Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana, but also Tennessee, Kentucky, and I accidentally wrote Indiana a second time, as well.
Twice. It was there twice.
But also there were significant tornadoes in Alabama and Kansas. At least 12 tornadoes touched down and wreaked havoc that day. It was a widespread outbreak, with severe thunderstorms occurring as far east as Ohio, as far southwest as Louisiana, and as far southeast as Georgia. Strong thunderstorms were reported in a broad area that also included parts of Oklahoma, Michigan, Ontario, Canada, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. Numerous reports of hail and straight line winds were reported with up to 4.5 inch diameter hail recorded, which, for reference, a softball is 3.5 to 3.8 inches in diameter. By all accounts, it was a what? Oh, wait, no, some of that information was showing up again.
It was like, bye.
What began in the early mid-afternoon as discrete supercell thunderstorms eventually consolidated into a potent squall line. This makes the tri-state outbreak the deadliest tornado outbreak, March 18th, the deadliest tornado day, and 1925, the deadliest tornado year in U.S. history. Now, in addition to confirmed tornadoes, there were undoubtedly others with lesser impacts, the occurrence of which have been lost to history, sadly. So now we can really start going into the timeline of of this tornado. So obviously, I know I've kind of said this already several times, but I'll say it again for this case. March 18th, 1925. If a devastating tornado was on its way, there was no sign in the sky. March 18th began as an enticingly warm early spring day, patches of blue sky mixed with rain clouds. Eventually, the skies darkened to deep charcoal, as it normally would on a spring day. So, this is where we begin the official story. This is where the official timeline begins. Moore Township, Shannon County, Missouri, 12:40 p.m. The tornado was first sighted as a low, ragged cloud and eventually into a weak, highly visible, and relatively small condensation funnel in the rugged forested hills of Moore Township, Missouri, at about 12:40 p.m. However, this was likely a separate member of the tornado family, and the main member likely began in Reynolds County, west-northwest of Ellington, around 5 minutes later. Ellington, 1 p.m. The first fatality occurred around 1:01 p.m. when a farmer was caught off guard northwest of Ellington. And this, you're going to be seeing this several times. I cut down that the map of where the tornado went and zoomed in on the actual towns itself to get a better detail and to really kind of give a good timeline of this. But that fatality, in fact, it was a farmer named Sam Flowers. As Sam Flowers spurred his horse on toward his farmhouse, a low rumble grew on the horizon. The sky to the southwest had grown dark and menacing, and a warm wind had begun whistling through the tall oaks and short-leaved pines. The horse, affectionately named Babe, broke into a full gallop as Sam grasped desperately at his saddle horn. Large hailstones pummeled the earth and left divots in the soft grass. Within seconds, the distant rumble bore down with a tremendous roar. What happened next is not clear, but a short while later, Babe returned to the Flowers farm without her rider. Which,
Ooh.
I'm having, here we go. I don't know what just happened, but for some reason, I kind of freaked out for a sec because I thought the laptop was freezing up. Okay, well, since I'm back on the studio, let me just get to the comments real quick. Sean said I've seen that, and also been told it was. Oh, he must be referring to the photograph that I was showing.
Yeah, he must be. Yeah, it can't be meaning it about the actual. Didn't know about that. Very interesting. It is very interesting. All of this stuff is. You've always got to kind of, you have to put yourself in the shoes of these people that were actually witnessing it at that time as well. I mean, can you imagine back in that day seeing something of that scale coming towards you? Nah.
Oh my! It would have been bad. I mean, and that's
yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that because I got something that kind of kind of relates to what you just said about being in those people's shoes.
Yeah, no.
Let me just get to the rest of the comments quickly. Hello, Mort. Good to see you.
Hello.
Okay, Sean said, I've always wondered if that tornado was a multi-vortex tornado, and it most likely is. Hey, Rochelle, Rochelle's a very good friend of mine. She actually has an interest in storms like I do, so I'm glad she's tuning in. And there's also her friend and my friend, Anthony. Good to see you here, too.
Hello there, everyone.
Hey, Zach. Yes, it's good to be back. It's still temporary, but I put this slideshow together for this special occasion. Hey, Natalie, good to see you as well. Okay, so now I'm caught up. Let's get right back because again, I don't know what happened before that. I thought the laptop was freezing, but now we're good. So yeah, the Babe returned to the Flowers farm without her rider. Sam, in this case, was found several hours later, some distance from the road, his head smashed beneath a tree. The most devastating tornado in United States history had claimed its first victim. And it's about to get a lot worse. Now, I know the information. I was going to say the information on this next slide is going to be relatively small, but do not worry because I got it on full screen. I could see it perfectly well. So the next town that was affected was Annapolis, 1:15 p.m. The tornado sped to the northeast, moving into Iron County and hitting the mining town of Annapolis and the small mining village of Leadana. In the small mining village of Annapolis, most residents had just returned to work from their lunch breaks. Just east of town is the tiny outpost of Leadana, named after the I don't even know how to say I don't even know how to say it. I'm just going to skip over.
Don't worry, that's going to be me as well later. I've got a couple in here that I'm like, no.
Named after the mineral harvested throughout the area, many of the men had returned to toil in the mines deep below ground. Children had just been called in from recess at Annapolis School and were streaming back into the small two-story brick structure. The first indication of trouble came from residents just outside of town who were afforded a relatively clear view of the rolling hills to the west. The skies in that direction had taken on a strange, bruised appearance, the type that often preceded the strong storms that lashed the region at least a few times each spring. Suddenly, a murky figure emerged atop the nearest hill, more resembling a great billowing fog than a funnel cloud. The tornado ripped through the valley and engulfed the tiny town and its residents in seconds. The children at Annapolis School became frightened by the rapidly deteriorating weather. The sun disappeared in a torrent of rain and hail. Wind shook the trees outside the schoolhouse windows. The teacher, fighting back her own trepidation, gathered the children around her desk in an attempt to comfort them. The cries of the 25 students were drowned out by the furious roar as the tornado blasted through, taking just seconds to reduce much of the brick schoolhouse to rubble. Miraculously, all of the children survived with only minor injuries. The mines in Leadana also sustained heavy damage. Offices, medical buildings, grocers, and other structures were destroyed, and much of the mining machinery was ripped and mangled beyond repair. Within a matter of minutes, I don't know why the pictures are not. Okay, there we go. The pictures were not showing up for some reason.
Like, no.
Within a matter of minutes, 2 people were killed, and an estimated 90% of the town was leveled. Cherokee Pass, 1:40 p.m. It then crossed into the sparsely populated areas of Madison County, south of Fredericktown, where near Cherokee Pass, the tornado steadily began to grow larger. As the school children and miners rushed back to town to check on their families, they were greeted with a scene of total devastation. Residents wandered in a daze. Children cried for their parents. Survivors climbed out from mountains of broken timber and other debris. Those who witnessed the aftermath later recounted Of the town's approximately 400 buildings, more than 90% were damaged or destroyed. The tornado was likely only of moderate intensity as it struck the town, but it left a trail of damage perhaps a mile wide. 4 people were killed in all, 2 in Annapolis and 2 in Leadana, who were caught above ground and struck by flying timbers. A marriage certificate for Nell and Osro Kelly, the latter of whom was among the tornado's victims, was later found 77 miles away in Murfreesboro. The local lead industry was nearly ruined. The mine continued to operate in limited capacity until the 1940s, but it never again matched the production it had achieved before the tornado. Because of its resemblance to the low hills of southwest Germany's Black Forest region, the Ozark Hills of Iron, Madison, and western Bollinger counties were populated largely by German immigrants. Most had become farmers, and the grapes that many of them grew were among the finest in the United States for producing high-quality wine. The terrain was rough, forested, and sparsely populated, leading to a number of gaps in the documented track of the tornado. It's not clear whether any of the gaps represents an actual break in the tornado path, but what is clear is that where the swirling vortex did strike, it had lost none of its violent intensity, and it was just beginning. You have to remember. Oh, now this. This is what I mentioned before. Imagine, like you said, for people to have to live through this,
Yeah.
listen to this information. I also have videos that are from 2 different documentaries, but it's mainly one that features interviews of actual tri-state tornado survivors. These were filmed back in the mid to late 90s. So the fact that it's now been over 25, 30 years ago, sadly, many of the survivors that were featured in these videos had passed away. So this also gives me a break too, so I can catch my breath. But yeah, I have an actual survivor. I have clips of actual survivor interviews.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now let me know if you could hear this.
Through the windows of the Annapolis schoolhouse, the sky.
Can you hear it?
It's a little bit kind of like cutting in and out.
Okay, well, because I also paused it too, so I just wanted to do a quick test run before we continued. All right, we'll try it. Let's try this again.
Through the windows of the Annapolis schoolhouse, the sky darkened to a deep charcoal, as it will on a spring day. Bernice Jones and her classmates heard a seemingly familiar sound.
Like a train, like a heavy loaded train that was really pulling.
But the rapidly approaching sound wasn't that of a train. At that moment, Bernice's father was 450 feet underground in the lead mine. There was a faint rumbling overhead, followed by total power failure. The miners were stranded in darkness. A narrow staircase, their only route to daylight.
Bill Hoyt, 450 feet. They would start a man, and they had landings every so often. You know.
Slowly, Bernice's father and the other miners emerged from the black hole, completely unprepared for what they were about to see.
Devastation. Said he just couldn't blink his eyes. Just couldn't imagine how that could happen.
A giant tornado had touched down in the wilderness a few miles away, and it made a terrible visitation upon the little town.
It came over the ridge, just swept through the town, and took most of the town away with it.
Okay, yeah, it's really incredible for the clips that I found. Now, here's the thing, because you probably noticed I don't have any photos of this particular video. Now, have an issue here with the slide again, but mysteriously, there were no reports of a funnel cloud at Annapolis. What witnesses saw was something that looked like a dark ground-hugging fog, or a big wide fog bank. One eyewitness described it looking like a cloud eating the ground. So because of that reason, according to the National Weather Service, no photographs or film reels of the tri-state tornado were taken or are known to exist. So understandably, we can only imagine what the tri-state tornado may have looked like. But what we do know is that it was terrifying. And like I said, didn't even look like a tornado, understandably. The tornado was frequently described by witnesses as an amorphous rolling fog, boiling clouds on the ground, a dust storm, or even a fire, and fooled normally weather-wise farm owners in addition to people in general who did not sense the danger until the storm was upon them. The condensation funnel was also reportedly sometimes wrapped in copious dust and debris, which likely obscured it and made it less recognizable. The parent supercell apparently transitioned to a high precipitation HP variety, which is among one of the most dangerous types of supercells to exist because that means it's producing a lot of rain and hail. So it would have been by the HP variety by the time it struck West Frankfort, meaning that the tornado was not readily visible as it approached, as it was often shrouded in heavy rain and hail. The very strong tornado, modern meteorologists estimate that its winds top 300 miles per hour in some locations, at times exhibiting an unusual appearance due to partially to its size. At one point in Missouri, it was a full 1.5 miles wide and the probable low cloud base of its parent thunderstorm. So, in other words, because the parent thunderstorm and the wall cloud, which is often usually described as looking kind of like a layer of a layer cake, because it was so close to the ground, I think it ended up fooling a lot of people thinking, okay, maybe this wasn't a tornado. So it was, they just cannot recognize it. The tornado was also often accompanied by extreme downburst winds throughout the entirety of its course. The accompanying downbursts periodically increased the width of the damage path from the overall average of 0.75 miles, varying from 1 to 3 miles wide at times. Now, although there are no photographs or film reels of this tornado, I did, however, grab a number of photographs of tornadoes that did have a similar appearance to it. So these pictures I'm going to present could also give us kind of an idea of what this tornado may have actually looked like back in 1925. So we'll start off with this picture right here. This is actually the tornado that hit Wichita Falls, Texas in 1979. And you could see, and according to survivors who have seen this picture, they said this greatly resembled the tri-state tornado.
Holy hell.
Yeah. And you can see
it just looks like a wall.
Yeah, it looks kind of like a dust storm too, doesn't it?
It's a dust wall. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got this is another picture of it. The same tornado we just saw from a different angle this time. And you can still see it looks like a dust cloud.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It kind of looks like a cross between that and like a mushroom cloud.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Like an explosion.
Yeah. This one right here is another one that shows from 2003. This one shows, again, the dust cloud look. I'm not sure where this tornado actually occurred, but you can clearly see it's, other than from the year it was taken. But yeah, it shows that similar appearance once again. Now, for those that, for the actual tornado, for people who witnessed this giant cloud that was on the ground, it was quite obvious that some of these pictures, it didn't look particularly menacing or anything. It just looked like fog moving along the hills practically.
Mm.
Oh, and here's one more. So this is from another one from Missouri from 2004. And again, it kind of does look like a giant fog in some way.
Yeah, it kind of looks like the clouds are kind of meeting with the land, doesn't it?
Yeah. That's why it just looked like fog moving along the hills practically, just like this photograph. Now there are some sketches I did find of it. This was when this tornado was being supposedly the sketch is supposed to describe when it was just when it was seen at the nearby next town it was hitting. Um, the mysterious fog then left Annapolis. Dozens of homes were destroyed across 50 miles of Iron, Madison, and Bollinger counties. In Bollinger County, 32 children who were taking shelter were injured when 2 schools were damaged. Multiple homes and farms were completely destroyed near Licksville, where a farmer and sadly 3 children were killed, and a third child died from her injuries 1 week after the storm. Sedgwickville, 2 p.m. About 10 miles west of Sedgwickville in northwestern Bollinger County, grass and several inches of soil were reportedly scoured from the ground near the home of Emily Schrum, which was completely leveled. The tornado carried sheets of iron as far as 50 miles away. Beeley, Missouri, 2:05 p.m. Crossing into Perry County, the tornado reportedly developed here's Beeley right there. Reportedly developed a double funnel as it struck the town of Beeley, destroying many homes in and around the town and killing a farmer. The massive tornado churned through the tiny village of Beeley, joined by the satellite vortex that traveled on a nearby parallel track for about 3 miles. So literally, this tornado just split into 2 separate ones before eventually rejoining.
Yeah. So it kind of like twinned itself, didn't it? And split into other tornadoes to go
Yeah,
different directions, I guess.
in a way, yes.
Mm.
Between the 2 tornadoes, dozens of homes were destroyed and 4 Beeley's residents were killed. To the northeast, in the unincorporated community of Ridge, the Ridge Parochial School was squarely in the path of the violent twister. The wind began driving sheets of rain against the roof, and soon it blew the thick wooden door open. The teacher, determined not to let a little thunderstorm ruin her classes, ordered the students to hold the door close against the storm. As the tornado bore down, it ripped the school from its foundation and sent it hurling several yards into a nearby hillside. Miraculously, despite the complete destruction of the structure and dozens of serious injuries, none of the school's occupants were killed. It then continued moving on to the floodplain of the Mississippi River, where again, witnesses recalled a tumbling black cloud. So I got every time that it's being described as a black cloud, I have more pictures that I just showed, a minute or 2 ago. So here is another one, just like before. And you can clearly see this. You can barely see this one. And this one's shrouded in rain once again.
Yeah.
We got this one right here. And when you compare these pictures to the actual tri-state tornado, I mean, just the way how to describe it too. I mean, it looks just like a boiling mass, like a monster, like something that's almost alive, literally.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a lot as well, like when over here in the UK especially, we get a hell of a lot of these rain clouds whereby you can actually see where it's raining from far away.
Yeah.
And that's what it kind of reminds me of, to be fair. Like the rainfall, when you can see the rainfall from afar and you know it's raining in the distance.
Yeah, absolutely. This next one is probably my favorite, and what's kind of strange, I remember watching this one live. This is pretty much the one I kind of imagine what the tri-state tornado actually looked like. This is a photo of the EF4, EF5 tornado that struck Birmingham, Alabama back in April of 2011. And like I said, I actually remember watching this live. I'll never forget the day watching this. And it does have, again, that giant, dust cloud look to it.
Yeah, it definitely, again, it looks like the sky is falling onto the floor, which is a bit worrying.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is another favorite of mine. This also occurred during the same outbreak. This was in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And again, that shows that look once again, that it looks like it's the sky is truly connected to the ground, but it's almost like the sky and the ground have literally become one, literally.
Yeah, it literally. Yeah, it's like you can literally see. Well, it does literally look like there is actually clouds coming down from the sky across the darkness of the sky in the background as well, which is quite interesting.
Definitely. Just want to get to the comments real quick because it has been a little while. Let's see here. 1 second while I'm getting this ready. Oh, Zach here said I had a tornado throw a Phillips 66 sign through our picture window growing up in Kansas. Wow. Jeez. Rochelle said, it's Haley McHenry. Oh my God, that's not too far from us actually. So that's kind of weird that we're getting this severe weather.
It's like when you're watching this, you don't want hail, and we were just talking about hail with this.
Sean said barely. I think he's referring to the sound of the video. So I'm not sure if there's very much I could do for the sound. Sean here says, reminds me of the Oklahoma City tornadoes, what people describe. And he's absolutely right. Sean here also has a question, which I'm going to answer. Was there any information on how fast it might have been moving? Sean, it's funny. I will get to that shortly because I do have that answer within the slideshow itself. Hey, Noreen, good to see you.
Hello.
So anyways, going back, getting right back on track. Give me a second here. And also this particular tornado, this was an EF5. This was one of the strongest ever to hit the state of Mississippi. So that was definitely one not to be messed around with. Okay, anyways, Brazu, 2:15 p.m. As the tornado tore across the more populous rolling hills and lowlands of Perry County and toward the banks of the Mississippi River, the tornado again began to claim lives. At Brazu, another farmer was gravely injured and died 4 days later. Frona, 2:17 p.m. Numerous other homes and farms were completely leveled about 4 miles northeast of Frona as well. The very large, well-built home of Perry County District Judge Klaus Stuev was completely demolished. He sustained various injuries, while his wife tragically was killed, and a household guest died from her injuries 10 days later, which I think it's the next one here. I think I got a photo of it. Just to the west, the home and barn of Theo Holston were obliterated, and 3 family members were seriously injured. The town of Cornwall was also hit by the tornado. This is one of the last. This might actually be the last picture I have of the tornado that affected Missouri. Altogether, at least 12 people, possibly more, died, and another 200 were injured in Missouri. It left a path of devastation at least 85 miles long, perhaps up to 100 miles, and at times more than a mile wide. Legend has it that the tornado parted the Mississippi River as it crossed, and that on the Illinois side of the river, it rained fish.
So that's not what you want. It's like
definitely not.
That's a whole different coming of Jesus right there.
Very much so. Very much.
Yeah.
Stranger things would soon follow, and more horrible. For the tri-state tornado had only begun its deadly path. There were still 2 more states to cross. This alone would have been an impressive feat, but far worse was yet to come. The next 45 minutes were to bring perhaps the most horrifying display of sustained tornadic violence in recorded history. After spending nearly an hour and a half tearing across southeastern Missouri, the tornado then crossed the half-mile span of the Mississippi River into southern Illinois in seconds, debarking trees and deeply scouring the ground in rural areas before barreling into Jackson County and hitting its next target, the luckless riverside town of Gorham, Illinois, essentially obliterating the town. Gorham, Illinois, 2:30 p.m. On the Illinois side of the Mississippi River, towering riverside bluffs skirt the southern extent of a broad, flat floodplain. In the floodplain of the Mississippi, Gorham was accustomed to periodic damage from the elements, but nothing like this. In 1925, Gorham was a vital stop along the Missouri Pacific and Illinois Central railroads, where coal from across the region was funneled through the rail yards on the town's south side on its way to the larger markets from St. Louis to Texas. The influx of rail traffic brought welcome business to sleepy Gorham, as general stores, restaurants, hotels, and other amenities popped up to serve the railroad crews when they stopped to refuel and recool the engines. The permanent population was between 500 and 700, but Gorham was a town on the rise. Like so many others, the first warning of the approaching catastrophe that Gorham residents received was a dark, menacing mass of cloud approaching from atop the bluffs southeast west of town. The tornado roared across the fields west of Gorham with such tremendous force that it scoured a large patch of ground, stripping the grass from the earth and plowing up several inches of soil in a shallow gully. Trees on the outskirts of town were stripped of bark and limbs, with many ripped from the ground or snapped off. Those in Gorham had only seconds to react as the thundering black mass bore down on the town at more than 62 miles per hour. And that's the thing about this. I mean, when it struck Gorham, there's not very many pictures of it, but it just demolished the whole town. It killed.
It's like it ramped up even further, which, like, you would have thought after that amount of time, because weirdly enough, I have actually been in a tornado myself in the past, and it's not fun. But yeah, it's one of those things. By that point, you would actually think that it was actually dying itself down, and it would actually have picked itself back off into the sky at this point, or it gone into the sea or something and died itself right down. But it was actually like it was picking up speed from what I had reading. That's not a word. What I've read in my research, it's like it actually sped up.
It did. It really did.
Yeah,
And when,
and I was like, what? That's not possible. Yeah.
I mean, well, it was kind of a shock because, as you will see in just a second, like I said, this tornado, it just demolished the whole town. It killed a whole lot of people there. It wasn't the first town, obviously, to have killed people in, but it was the first town where it killed a lot of people. So,
Yeah.
and also the fact that this tornado was traveling at 62 miles per hour, you have to think to yourself, this is 1925, and not just here in the US, pretty much from around the world in this case, 60 miles per hour was a speed that no one back then associated with anything except for maybe the steam engine railroad locomotive trains. Of course, the
Yeah.
cars in those days didn't go as fast. Quite few of them there were. Most people were either still walking or had horses and buggies.
Yeah.
The tornado entered town near the rail yards, throwing boxcars, demolishing the nearby depots and office buildings. A section of train tracks was torn from the ground, and some of the cross ties were thrown into the rubble of surrounding buildings. A row of homes and businesses along Main Street virtually exploded in a cloud of shattered timbers and roofing. The rest of the town met the same fate, as rows of homes, apartments, and other buildings were reduced to rubble in a matter of seconds. One child was thrown nearly a quarter of a mile into the ruins of a business. In the words of a reporter for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, all morning before the tornado, it had rained. The day was dark and gloomy. The air was heavy. There was no wind. Then the drizzle increased. The heavens seemed to open up, pouring down a flood. The day grew black. Then the air was filled with 10,000 things: boards, poles, cans, garments, stoves, whole sides of the little frame houses. In some cases, the houses themselves were picked up and smashed to earth. And living beings, too. A baby was blown from its mother's arms. A cow, picked up by the wind, was hurled into the village restaurant. Near the center of town, a large building housed both the grade school and high school. The tornado tore off and battered the thick walls, collapsing them in on the children and teachers sheltering inside. 13-year-old Margaret Brown, daughter of school superintendent Lewis Watson Brown, was killed when she was reportedly cut in two by a large brass bell that had fallen from the peak of the roof. That's the other thing I want to point out too is you're gonna be probably hearing some pretty graphic details of this tornado, because when you hear a lot about tornadoes, a lot of times when it comes to the fatalities, usually it's either they've been crushed by debris or they were just hit by a very piece of debris of whatever. But this tornado in particular stands out. It probably has, as I would put, some of the goriest deaths I've ever heard that came from a tornado. So what I just read was just the start. Obviously, there's no pictures, but some of this information is going to be relatively graphic.
Yep.
We got
bound to happen.
we got a new viewer here, Farmer Venderoy, if I'm saying that correctly. I hope I am.
Binderoy? We're not doing well with that, are we?
Yeah.
Hello there.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for tuning in.
2010, I lost my home to a tornado. Wow. Well, hopefully
wow.
Well, hopefully now, your house has been rebuilt, since then. But I hope you're doing well. Let's see here. If this wasn't sad enough, by the way, this kid that was killed, of Lewis Watson Brown, in addition to his daughter, Brown's wife, Della, was also killed when their home was swept away. Two other families also suffered tremendous losses. 73-year-old Mary Moshrin Rosen and three of her adult children were killed by the swirling vortex, as were four members of the Needham family. A pair of pants containing scraps of paper bearing the name Moshrin Rosen were subsequently found nearly 20 miles to the northeast of Gorham. A husband and wife were thrown some distance from their home. Shards of timber impaled through the wife's abdomen. So that's another thing too. In addition to being so graphic, these people that were killed by this tornado, they literally died a horrible and brutal death. No doubt about it. I can only hope that. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's one of those things. Like, you think about, I don't know. Like, I could just imagine if I was an individual that was like witnessing some of the stuff, and you just see like actual cattle and people being actually thrown around in midair. It would be like something out of a freaking sci-fi film, or out of like a sci-fi series. You wouldn't think it was real, would you? It's just ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, they're so strong. Like these types of natural disasters. I mean, even in terms of like hurricanes and stuff. Like when we get things here in the UK, it is completely different, obviously, to the stuff that you guys have in the US. But even when we get stuff here in the UK, there is moments whereby we are like, okay, this isn't looking good for us.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that, but my only hope was that when a lot of these people were killed, I just hope that their deaths were quick.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. I hoped that they didn't suffer. That's always what people think of in these sorts of situations, is I hope that they didn't suffer and that there was no other sort of lasting, I guess there would be, but no lasting trauma from seeing what people had seen, because I assume that people probably witnessed a lot of very gruesome things that day.
Absolutely. And like I said, it gets worse. So yeah, I mean,
Yay!
almost every structure in Gorham was leveled or swept away. 60 of the 80 homes, all the storefronts, the train depot, and 2 out of the 3 levels of the school were destroyed, with the remaining 20 houses being damaged. Railroad tracks were also reportedly ripped from the ground. It was all over in a few minutes. Northeast at an average, I already said this, at an average speed of 62 miles per hour. The cloud was moving at twice the normal speed of a tornado. By the time the fury passed, Gorham had become the first, but unfortunately not the last, to bear a grim distinction: 100% destruction. Nearly every single structure in town was damaged or destroyed, the majority of them reduced to splinters and scattered to the wind. In the span of minutes, thriving Gorham had been reduced to an utter wreck from which it would never fully recover. More than half the town's population was injured or killed. 30 were killed in the immediate storm. 7 fatalities occurred at a school, and 170 were injured, 6 of whom later died. In the chaos that followed, as would be the case in many areas, no accurate list of the dead was kept. As best as can be discerned through newspaper reports and cemetery listings, between 32 and 37 of Gorham's residents were killed. I already wrote that down, so I'm just going to skip ahead. Dozens of horses and cattle were also killed, and one horse from near Gorham was allegedly found at Sand Ridge, nearly 2.5 miles to the northeast.
Oh my God, that's all.
Yeah, Gorham never really knew what hit it, and 10 miles away, an even larger town never knew what was coming, which is what I'm about to show here.
This is
Murfreesboro.
the one I couldn't say.
Yeah, Murphy, 2:45 p.m. If Gorham was a town on the rise, Murfreesboro was what it inspired to. A modest but thriving city and coal shipping center, Murfreesboro was home to more than 15,000 people in the early part of the 20th century. The Big Muddy River, a tributary of the Mississippi, wound its way through the western part of town. Business was booming, and much of it was centered in a relatively small, densely populated industrial sector in the northwest quadrant of the city. The industrial section was the lifeblood of the growing city, providing jobs and rapid economic growth that had made Murfreesboro a fixture in southern Illinois. However, its biggest worry at that moment was the bank robbery that had taken place the day before. $1,500 had been looted from the Avis Steed Bank by 2 teenage gunmen. It was suspected to be an amateur job. Though the city was overrun with gangsters, few of them would get involved with bank robbery because let's remind ourselves, this is the 1920s. This was during Prohibition. So, and Murfreesboro in this case was no exception, as the city also held appeal for some because of its nonchalant attitude toward Prohibition. There was just too much money to be made selling illegal alcohol. While neighboring towns cracked down on illegal production facilities and speakeasies, alcohol was rarely difficult to find in Murfreesboro. However, no one within Murfreesboro expected the real horror that was about to change the city and its citizens forever. And also, this particular town that I'm going to go into detail, this is actually one of the more notorious towns that the tri-state tornado hit, and you'll understand why once I get through these details. At 2:45 p.m., less than 8 minutes after laying waste to the town of Gorham, the monstrous storm thundered into the southwest edge of Murfreesboro. After leveling a number of homes outside of town, the tornado crossed the Big Muddy River and almost immediately just began destroying homes along Clay and Dewey streets. At Lincoln School, where children had recently been called in from recess, The windows shattered almost simultaneously as the outer fringe of the circulation passed to the northwest. Check out that. Now that is just an unbelievable picture of a boxcar laying on top of another one. Um, a wall on the second floor collapsed and crumbled outward. Thanks to the quick thinking of the school's officials, however, students were moved to the northwest corner of the building, and there were no injuries. Just to the north and closer to the center of the path, enormous hardwood trees were snapped just feet above ground level. Some were stripped bare or uprooted and thrown hundreds of feet. And the rest of this basically just
Oh,
shows more
God.
pictures. Yeah, this really demonstrates the destruction of Murfreesboro.
Wow.
What do we have? Okay. As the tornado approached the intersection of Walnut and 20th Street, the damage became catastrophic. Several rows of homes were completely demolished, with some partially swept away, and trees in the area were debarked and denuded. This is a bird's eye view of the city of Murfreesboro when it was hit. Six member now tragically, six members of the Miller family, including children of ages 1, 3, 5, 9 years old, were killed at one home along Walnut Street when their home was completely flattened. Along Logan Street to the north, 17 children were killed when the Longfellow School partially collapsed from the force of the wind. And that's the actual school right there, the Longfellow School. Eyewitness accounts report survivors rushing to the school to try to free the children from the rubble. Its many instances tearing their hands to the bone in their efforts. The Mobile and Ohio Railroad shop and roadhouse, about a block to the east of the school, was severely damaged. Some workers survived by taking shelter under the heavy machinery and structures, but 35 were killed by building collapses and flying debris. A number of locomotives were rolled or thrown from the tracks, causing further death and destruction. At 15th and Logan, a funeral was in progress in the basement of the First Baptist Church. Construction had been in progress on the church building and was nearing completion at the time. According to the Reverend H.T. Abbott, he had just begun reciting the popular funeral sermon, "Yeah, though ye walk in the valley and the shadow," when a thunderous noise overtook the church and collapsed a large section of the sturdy building. Being assembled in the basement, there were no injuries among the funeral crowd. Immediately upon exiting the rubble of the building, however, the funeral goers was confronted with a sight of utter devastation. That's the actual church right there that lost much of its structure.
I was going to say, it's taken down like over half of it. Wow.
About a block to the northeast, the Logan School had suffered heavy damage. That's there. And here we go. That is a picture of the Logan School. Many in the crowd sprinted to the school to aid in rescuing children and staff from the rubble. Tragically, once again, 9 children were killed at the Logan School. So yeah, that's the other. This is when you start hearing about a lot of kids that sadly died from this tornado. Oh yes. Now I got a couple more clips here, more of survivor accounts from the same documentary, and well, as I would probably say, I'll let these videos basically do the talking. While I'm doing that, I'm also going to check on the comments.
That afternoon, children filled the classrooms of the John A. Logan School, which had been condemned a year earlier. The soft bricks used in its 1884 construction were now thought to be unsafe. The school was said to be bulldozed at the end of the school year. At 2:45 p.m. on March 18th, the students were in class, many of them looking out the west windows at a very unusual sky. Suddenly, one of those windows was ripped from the wall.
The pane of glass sailed right across the roof, hit the blackboard, and was splattered.
Seconds later, The roof flew away. Walls disappeared into the sky. 7 children died in the wreckage of Logan's school. Fortunately, much of the soft brick had simply been carried away instead of falling into the classrooms. This was one of the safer places to be.
Okay. Just before we get, I continue. Let me just get to this comment that Farmer Benderoy had wrote. The Great Southern Missouri Minnesota outbreak in 2010. My friend Mitch lost his hog farm of 30,000 hogs. He watched from 3 miles away little pink tan dots flying through the air. Holy cow.
Jesus, that's something that you would never ever like. You wouldn't ever be able to get that image out of your head because obviously, regardless of whether, that it's a hog farm, they're still living creatures, and I feel that you would kind of remember that for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Not to mention that you feel so helpless when you see that in the air, and when you see something like that, there's obviously nothing you can do about it, of course.
Yeah, you're not exactly going to be able to do anything to help,
Yeah. Now, the tornado continued northeast, chewing through the residential heart of the city. The twister leveled all but the extreme southeastern side of town, where many densely populated working class neighborhoods saw some of the storm's most horrific effects. Hundreds of homes were completely level and swept away in some areas, crushing or throwing those inside. Many other structures were also damaged or destroyed throughout the town. Many families suffered multiple casualties. When a horse and buggy was caught in the tornado near Manning Street, the horse was found more than a half mile away. The buggy, on the other hand, was never found. In all, at least 120 city blocks were completely demolished by the tornado's unbridled fury. Once the tornado had passed, another disaster began to unfold. Coal burning stoves throughout the city, toppled or thrown by the wind, ignited fires that quickly turned the shattered piles of rubble into a great inferno. Many of those who were fortunate enough to survive the initial onslaught burned to death as the fire erupted out of control. 18 people were killed by fire at the Bluefront Hotel after becoming trapped in the basement. And that is the remains of the Bluefront Hotel right there.
Jesus.
With the water mains, I mean, it was just literally such a huge complication, obviously, in which the fire department was just powerless to stop it. And with the water mains destroyed, dynamite was used to try to stop the fires, but only caused more destruction. By the time the fires had been extinguished, Murfreesboro was in ruin. Oh, yes. Now we got another video here. This is from the other documentary, and this features 2 more survivors in Murfreesboro. This one is going to go for about, I think, about 2.5 minutes. While the video is playing, I'm actually going to get myself some more water, so I'll let the
Same
video.
here.
Yeah, I'll let the video play, and I'll be right back.
Murfreesboro, Illinois, suffered the greatest losses in the tri-state tornado.
Can you hear this?
$10 million in damage.
We can hear it. It cuts in and out, but other than that, it's okay.
Okay, because this was from a different video this time, I wanted to make sure. But here, I'll be right back then.
Murfreesboro, Illinois, suffered the greatest losses in the tri-state tornado.
I'll be right back as well, guys. Get some water on.
234 dead. Frances Powers, her baby's diapers.
Oh, we were about, I'd say, about 4 feet from that wind was blowing. I'll never forget that. What my mother's house, that big, low rolling wind. Oh, looked like it was. Sometimes it was going like this, and sometimes it was going like this. I don't know how them clouds would mix, but it just looked like a great big cloud.
Bill Molenbrock was struggling through debris with his family. They came upon a small boy in the street.
Okay.
He couldn't have gotten up there by himself, no question. He must have been blown up there. That's all. And he wasn't hurt. No, he couldn't have possibly climbed the tree, even though it's much smaller than it is today. But somehow he got up there. I don't know how.
Dr. Mullenbrock was in high school when the tornado hit. He was in the room to his right.
We couldn't see. Couldn't get out of the room. Rushed in there. Kids were yelling because their ears were bothering. And it lasted maybe a minute and a half total.
Students were buried alive in the study hall area. It was up to their friends to save them from suffocation.
It was the plastic. They no place to breathe. The air couldn't get to them. And so mouth full and nose was full. And they couldn't get their arms up to dig it out themselves. And two of them, we got to them. Why, one of the girls gave me her petticoat. And there was some water around her, and I did start to work on it. We had no indication that it would be a tornado of that dimension. I saw the big cloud over there, and I thought, well, I've seen that before. But that wasn't the real offender. It was the one behind us. So we finally heard the roar of it. But none of us saw that.
Well, I didn't know that it was a tornado. I thought it was just a bad storm. My mother said that if she had the wind, saw it coming, she'd been long gone with it.
The tri-state tornado killed more people than any other single tornado in history.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, came back just in time.
Okie dokes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's obvious. I mean, like I said, it is truly sad stuff, knowing of what these people went through, 100 years ago. Oh, now the next set of slides that I'm going to be presenting, which again I don't have to really say too much, is the damage aftermath to give you a real good look of how bad this tornado was when we went through Murfreesboro.
Wow.
And you see just like total devastation.
Yeah, I mean, so far everything that you've shown, there isn't like one building that hasn't been pretty much almost like leveled completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of them, it seems that there isn't like, I mean, there's no roof, there's hardly any foundations left.
Very
It's a bit
much so.
mad.
Oh, I have another clip here. This is with another survivor. This was a later clip that was filmed in 2009. This only on the Weather Channel. This only runs for about a minute. So here is another survivor. The sound may be a little bit hard to hear on this one, but I'll try it out anyway.
The Twister bore down on Murfreesboro, Illinois, a manufacturing town of 20,000 people. Young Wallace Aiken was playing on his living room when his mother saw the turbulent cloud outside.
She scooped me up and turned me into the bedroom, where she knelt over me, and then the house took flight and ended up on top of the garage.
The Aikens were fortunate to be alive, but had to face new dangers as fires broke out, sparked by overturned coal stoves.
They had this tragedy of just a huge conflagration that the fire department was powerless to stop.
After leaving 234 dead in Murfreesboro, the tornado wreaked inconceivable damage on the town of DeSoto.
Yeah, it was a pretty short one. Let's see what else. What do we got next? Okay, some more pictures of Murfreesboro. I basically was adding as many as I possibly could to this. Yeah. Makes you wonder, like, when you see these people in these pictures, like, exactly how they must have been feeling, when just being around all this devastation around them.
Yeah, it's it's kind of eerie if you think about it, because you just think to yourself, like, what are these people like? What have these people gone through? Like, have wherever they were from at that moment in time, have they lost everything?
Yeah. And
Like, that's the first thing that I think of. Have they lost like their whole livelihood? Their friends, their families, their houses and possessions. It's a bit mad, like, to think that these people, like, we're seeing them now, but back then, were those people like literally thinking, what am I going to do next with my life now because I have nothing?
yeah, exactly. Sean
Yeah,
make these pictures and videos just look like World War II, and indeed it does. It really does give that look like it's a war zone.
yeah, completely agree. Like, it doesn't look like a tornado has struck. It does look like it's something from the 1900s when the war was on.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, this occurred before World War II.
Yeah.
Oh, looks like I accidentally ended up putting the same picture of these last two here, but either way, it shows more of the
It was so
destruction.
good you put it twice.
Yeah. Oh, this one's a little bit hard to see, but that's actually a panoramic view of the tri-state tornado, of the damage path in Murfreesboro. These pictures here I borrowed from a YouTube video of a guy who uploaded these. Damn it, that's like the third time I've seen that picture. These kind of tannish looking ones, yeah, those ones I got from a YouTube video of a guy who was sharing. I guess these pictures belong to his grandfather, and they were recently discovered a few years ago. And I also recently I also recently commented, asked if I could borrow these and add them to the slideshow. He didn't really say too much, but I did later find out that some of these pictures have been posted publicly on other websites. So I think he pretty much donated them to the Jackson County Historical Society.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you can just see up. Look at this picture right here. Like, not only do you have more destruction right here, but see smoke in the background. That's from the resulting fires.
Wow. It just
Just,
looks like it just looks like some of the places that I go to, like, that are completely abandoned.
yeah, they do. They really do
Yeah.
look like that in a way. And for the longest time, that's kind of how they were in a way. There's Longfellow School once again. I think this might be the last collection I have here of these pictures of Murfreesboro. Just unbelievable about just the destruction that this tornado really gave to the town of Murfreesboro.
Yeah, there's so much, like, what always really shocked me with images like this, it was the same in the World War images as well that you see around, which I've seen a lot of, obviously, over the years. But it's one of those things where you see people just going about their normal everyday lives because, of course, they have no other option. And it's like, they must be standing there being like, what am I actually even doing? Because
Yeah,
there's nothing to really do. There's nothing to see. There's nothing to do. All I can do, I guess, is help other people kind of repair their lives.
exactly.
Yeah, it must have been such a shock to them.
It must have been, undoubtedly. And I'm sure the reaction, like of what you see in these pictures was probably just total shock.
Yeah.
Let's see, what do we got next? Okay. The industrial sector of the city was destroyed, as was the railroad and many of the businesses in town. The tornado had torn a complex of path of destruction through the city nearly a mile wide. In some cases, moderately damaged homes stood across the street from areas of total devastation, suggesting the tornado had a multiple vortex structure, which I know not everyone always knows what that is. If it's a multiple vortex tornado, that's when obviously you have several smaller tornadoes revolving around the main funnel. Those
Yeah.
tornadoes are quite destructive and can because they can add literally another 100 miles per hour to the main funnel.
Wow.
A number of homes well to the south of the primary path also suffered moderate damage, apparently caused by intense inflow and rear flank downdraft winds associated with the supercell. The tornado had already tracked more than 110 miles and claimed nearly 300 lives, yet a full 2 hours of death and destruction still lay ahead. A mile wide and moving a mile a minute, the tornado gripped through the northwest side of Murfreesboro. There was no warning, no time to take cover. Warning sirens were not yet in use, and all phone and telegraph lines to the west were down. But that wasn't the only problem. Thing was, it just didn't look like a tornado, as you can see from the sketch. So, again, this goes back to what we were talking about was the appearance of it, was that just due to the fact, as like in this picture, this is actually a picture of the El Reno tornado that occurred in El Reno, Oklahoma in 2013. This was the one that killed the 3 storm chasers tragically. And once again, it shows it doesn't look like a tornado like the tri-state one.
Mm.
I
Yeah,
mean,
again, that kind of looks more like it's just. I don't want to say it looks like a really, really bad rain cloud because it looks worse than that. I will admit it does look worse than that. But yeah, no, it doesn't look like that is going to be something that's going to touch down to the floor, does it?
yeah, absolutely. And here's another one. This is another picture from 2013. But again, comparing these pictures to the tri-state tornado, again, to the fact it just didn't look like it, it was quite obvious, back then that there was, or whenever the case would have been, there was nothing to give any type of indication that this was a tornado until it got very, very close and people
Yeah.
started to see houses, it started to get really windy. I should say, until they started hearing a thundering, roaring type of sound, it began to get very windy. The ground began to shake, and they started seeing pieces of houses and trees in the air. And literally, there was basically everything within this funnel. There was wood, there was steel, there was glass, there was metal, there was even concrete, plastic, all different types of substances, rocks. So, they start seeing all these pieces of houses and trees in the air, pieces of trees in the air, pieces of buildings, pieces of cars, pieces of houses, buggies, glass, wood, steel, metal, concrete, rocks, to a more disturbing degree, animals or parts of animals, or to an even more disturbing degree, people or parts of people. And of course, by this time, something's very wrong.
Yes, just a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, I got 2 more pictures, I believe. This is another classic picture that once again shows it looks like a giant fog. This was, I think, in I can't remember where this was at, which area this was in. I think this might have been in Kansas about 4 or 5 years ago. Or actually, no, I think this was like 2014, I believe. And it just, you would not even interpret that would be a tornado right there.
No, because from far away, to be honest, it just looks like gradient of the sky.
Yeah.
And that's it. It doesn't look like it's actually a tornado at all.
The best way I could really describe this, even though this was almost 15 years before this movie was made, it was quite obvious that even back in 1925, a lot of people even back then saw tornadoes, obviously, as like the classic Wizard of Oz type tornado, where it's like a rope and it bends around basically and skips across the ground. And it can look menacing. This tornado that occurred 100 years ago, as you can see, like from this picture, for the most part, it looks more like a great giant blob practically. It doesn't look like your typical tornado.
No, it looks. See, this is the sort of, in my view, because you do find that ones in America, they can get up to these stupid astronomical sizes of like miles wide. And you just think to yourself that that's more like a, I don't know, like the desert storms, whereby it's almost like this blanket, this wall that goes across the whole desert.
Yeah,
It's more like that.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I should have mentioned this earlier. This actually was from that documentary, but the guy that said this really well. When they had all this weather to begin with, when it was just starting off as a storm, this was not a day where people were like, gee, the sky is looking very ugly looking. It's really
Like
windy.
there may be a storm coming in. They didn't think that at this point. There was
They
no
didn't think,
warning.
yeah, no one ever said that type of stuff, like, or it looks ugly, it's really windy, we're gonna have a really bad storm today. No one ever said that. Good night, Nigel. Thanks for tuning in. And I think I have one more of that same tornado from a different perspective. This is the same one this is probably again another favorite. And you could see this one especially. Look at the edges of it, like how straight it looks. It looks nothing
Yeah,
more than
there's
like
like a whole. Yeah, it's like you can tell the defined edge of where it is, like where it's touched down from and come down and funneled down from.
yeah, and again, it looks like a
Crazy.
giant rain or fog bank. I mean, gotta say, imagine being under that thing. That would if there were ever any houses that were hit by this tornado, I'm sure people underneath would have just it would have been a nightmare for them, undoubtedly.
Yeah, and you always get that sort of thing, which is exactly what we had when we had a tornado over here, which I witnessed, which I will never ever forget. But yeah, when you can tell when you're in it because I mean, obviously, I don't know if you've ever been in a tornado, Nick.
I have closely, but not a tornado like this stuff for sure. Though.
No, and even the small ones, because our ones are not that big. Like this was probably the biggest that we'd had, I think, on record since we had the really big storm over here in the UK, which was predicted as not going to happen, and then it did happen. And that was devastating to loads of people. But this was like the second thing that happened, whereby it was like quite traumatic. But I remember sort of being in it and being like, okay, it's really, really quiet. But you could tell that something really bad was going to happen. And I can't describe the feeling. It was like, and the notion, the idea that it's not normal, it's not a normal feeling. It was like, the only way I can describe it is being inside, because it kind of, what happened was the tornado actually came over us, because basically me and my family were in a caravan at the time, which is not where you want to be in the eye of a tornado.
Yeah.
But literally it came through, like I'll let you go through the rest of your slide in a minute, and I'll explain what actually happened.
Go right ahead.
But it was like the only way that I can just describe it is it was eerily, creepily silent. And then you got the feeling of like, we're going to die.
Yeah.
Like, and that is the worst feeling. And I remember, like, of course, us being British, we have to somehow, like, in the worst points, we always inject some kind of comedy into life somehow, no matter what's happening. And I remember my mum saying to my disabled nan, but bless her heart, my mum just said, "You need to hit the deck." And she was like, "I fucking can't." And you're just like, yeah, this is not the time for this. But at the same time, what else can you do at this point? So, but yeah, honestly, I just remember sitting there thinking, yeah, this is it now. We're all gonna freaking die. And it was literally, I remember it ripped through the tree. So basically, it came through Tesco's car park. Like, this is how funny this is, right? Like, me explaining this, people that know what Tesco's is will be like, this is hilarious. But at the time, it was not funny.
Oh,
But
I'm sure.
when you're looking back on it, it's quite funny. But it came through Tesco's car park, and I remember this weird sort of noise happening. And then my mum was looking out the window of the caravan, and I remember I'd been telling her all day, guys. We had been out all day with my nan. We were literally, at the beach. And then I remember being like, Mum, there's something not right, because it just got dark stupidly quickly, like to the point where I was like, this isn't a normal, like, everyday storm. There's something quite bad, sort of. And my mum was like a bit like, yeah, okay, you're a child, you don't know what you're talking about, sort of thing. I'm sure it's fine. It's just going to be a nasty sort of storm. But then I told my mum and I said, well, the water level has also risen like past where it should be. Because where the river runs into the sea, there's like this level. And I was like, but it's gone over that, and it's like overflowing onto the pathways. And I was just like, and the sea was like stupidly high. We're talking waves that were just ridiculously high for that time of year. And I was like, this isn't normal. So my mum was like, look, I think we should just go home, because, Sam's getting a bit dramatic.
Yeah.
But Sam's getting a bit dramatic. Let's go home. So we went back to the caravan, and I remember it got darker and darker. And then we heard this noise, and it sounded, the only way that I can describe it was it literally sounded like a million motorcycles starting up all at once. Like, that's what it sounded like to me. It was like a load of motorcycles had all started up like right over our heads. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And then my mum said that the only way that she could describe it was she saw the trees just literally part all the way down to the ground really slowly. They just parted. And then this swirling thing came through the trees towards her. And she was like, oh, yeah, no, okay, maybe Sam's right. Yeah, we're going to die at this point. But yeah, I remember it brought trolleys, it brought cars. And I mean, like I was telling earlier, the ones in America are a hell of a lot bigger, but you think this thing is quite a small tornado. It's probably about the size of my kitchen, which again is pretty big, but it's nowhere near what you get in America. And it was bringing whole cars, trees, it was uprooting trees on the way through. And luckily, I mean, it went down the pathway between all of the caravans that we were in our caravan park, and it went all the way down the middle, but then it just absolutely tore apart the caravan next door. It absolutely wrecked that caravan park, and it literally was like, we saw it just throwing whole caravans all over the freaking site next door to us. So we were so freaking lucky, because that could have been us. That caravan park was literally only a stone's throw away from us, and we were just seeing all of these cars, debris, caravans literally being thrown all over the place.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised the least bit.
Yeah, it was mad, absolutely mad.
Just to go back to because comments are starting to build up. Farmer Binley, he said the one that hit in Mitch was 2.1 miles wide. Jeez, that is
I can't
huge.
imagine. Yeah, I can't imagine that.
This tornado picture, it does look like it's definitely over a mile wide, and it could even possibly be 2. But Sean also makes a good point if that tornado is also rain wrapped, which it could possibly be. It does have that rain wrapped look. And hey, Jill, good to see you here. And let's see, Farmer Minley said it sounds like a jet engine, which is often usually described by the sound of tornadoes. Now, Sean here has a question. What's the biggest you've had in Britain and the UK?
Okay, so that one was actually probably one of the worst. I remember it was recorded as one of the worst on record here in Britain, but actually, weirdly enough, like storm-wise, the biggest one that we had was I think it was a cyclone that came from the sea, but it actually then turned into a full-blown hurricane. And our guy who was recording it, who basically told the whole of the UK that it wasn't going to happen, was extremely worried about his job when it then kicked off something rotten the next day. When he's like, nobody has to worry, everybody
Yeah.
can, it's absolutely going to be fine. This is Britain. It's not going to happen. And then suddenly the next day, yeah, there was like multiple deaths. Loads of again, a load of cattle had just gone missing, like from fields. They didn't know where they'd gone. A lot of cattle and people as well had also been flattened, taken out clean by like debris falling on them and things like that. But yeah, it took out boats. Like boats were literally sunk in that, and with people on them. Cruise liner ships and stuff like that had literally been taken clean out. And cargo ships as well, like loads of cargo ships that were coming over here at that time had actually been taken, like wiped out completely on the sea. But yeah, there was I can't remember what it was actually called. I'm just looking it up actually.
While you're looking that up, because I've actually done my research, when it comes to tornadoes, in this case in the UK, and I did learn that not necessarily, it's not really the deadliest, but it was at least the most destructive. Like the last time the UK had really been hit by like any type of real large tornado outbreak that really like actually destroyed a lot was an event that occurred back in December of 1954, in which 7 different tornadoes struck downtown London. But surprisingly, nobody, although a good portion of the city was hit, surprisingly, nobody died. But there were still several injuries as a result of these 7 tornadoes.
Yeah, I think that is actually, yeah, I think that was very, very similar to what we had happen with us. I know that it split up into, I think, 4 sort of smaller ones. So
Yeah.
it was a really big one, and then it actually separated into 4 separate little ones that went in different directions, and then of course destroyed the rest of everywhere, which was not great.
Let me continue. I'm going to continue onwards. I don't know if we're going to be able to get through all of this tonight, so what I'm probably going to have to do is I might have to make a part 2 out of this, which I think we're getting close to the halfway points anyway, so we'll probably save another part for next week to finish up. Hey, and there's Kate. Good to see you. So if that works for you, of course, for next week, if that's possible.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine, Nick. I'm more than happy to do that next week. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, we'll go through a few more slides before we call it for tonight. But anyways, okay, so I don't know if I already said this already, but I'll continue reading. In parts of Murfreesboro, nothing was left standing except a few denuded trees, bodies draped over branches. Buildings were turned into kindling. What the tornado destroyed, fire would consume. And this picture and this photo, you can't see it quite well, but you can actually see it's kind of smoky. That's coming from the fire. That's coming from the fires.
Oh wow.
I mean, it's not like the fires are like right next to the photographer. That's like coming from a few blocks away. That just goes to show like how big the fires did get and all the smoke that was blown. So that's from the fire in progress.
Jeez.
Now, in all, 188 people died in the immediate storm at Murfreesboro, including at least 20 who were never identified. The official number of injured was 623, while some other sources claim it could have been higher. Of those injured, 46 more later died. 230 in total, 234 people lay dead. To date, being the highest death toll exacted by a tornado in a single city in the history of the United States. More than 600 others were seriously injured. according to contemporary reports in local newspapers. Various receipts, checks, certificates, and other paper items from Murfreesboro were found as far away as Bloomington, Indiana, 180 miles to the northeast. Much of the town was turned into airborne debris swept along by the twister as it exited town. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Demolishing town after town, the tornado absorbed the wreckage into its monstrous cloud. After exiting Murfreesboro, the tornado tore across the countryside with undiminished ferocity. The Will School, about 2 miles northeast of town, was razed to its foundation. A few miles beyond the school, Electra Beasley and her son Richard were killed when their farmstead was destroyed and swept away. The tornado narrowed slightly as it approached the west side of DeSoto, but its destructive power was on full display. The tornado was on a fateful path, northeast along the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy rail line, making a sound not unlike a giant coal train. The twister now barreled along the same track. In its way, a city called DeSoto, a nondescript small town that would nevertheless become known throughout the area. So, this will probably be the final town that we're going to go get through. DeSoto, 2:50 p.m. The tornado then struck the farming town of DeSoto, which on a scale paralleling Gorham was virtually obliterated. As in Murfreesboro, whole sections of homes were completely flattened and swept away. Trees were debarked, denuded, and snapped, leading one resident to remark that not a tree was left standing taller than a man's knee in the main damage path. One couple was killed when their car was thrown 50 yards from the main highway. Several other vehicles were thrown or rolled and left completely mangled, and windrowing of debris was evident in several areas. The town was virtually annihilated, as you can see right here in these photographs. At the Albin State Bank, many residents took shelter in the reinforced concrete vaults. The bank and surrounding buildings were largely destroyed, despite being on the southern edge of the worst damage, but those who sheltered inside survived. Amid the ruins of the Albin State Bank, within this picture, you can't see it too well because of how small it is, but amid the ruins of the Albin State Bank and General Store, almost the only thing left untouched was the electric wall clocks, stopped at 2:50 p.m.
Oh, that's freaking freaky.
It is. It just goes to show, like, that tornadoes definitely show some of the strangest behavior out there. Many others in towns were not so lucky, as 36 lives were lost in the devastation of downtown DeSoto. The destroyed business district also caught fire after the storm's passage. In the immediate storm, 56 were killed, and another 105 were injured, 5 of whom later died, as many homes were swept away. But an even greater tragedy was looming, however, and this is definitely probably one of the more sadder parts of the story, undoubtedly. At the DeSoto school, just northeast of downtown, the threatening skies prompted officials to rush the children in from recess. The girls were quickly ushered back to their desks, while the boys were assigned to close the many windows along the outside walls of their classrooms. Moments later, the windows exploded in a hail of shattered glass and debris. Battered by the extreme wind, the top floor and a number of walls collapsed. Tons of bricks crumbled and fell atop the school children and faculty inside, crushing nearly 30 of the students to death and severely injuring many more, as evident in this picture where you can see that the roof had caved in. Because they were along the exterior walls closing windows, the majority of the victims were the boys. 4 more children were caught outside when the tornado struck. 3 young girls were using the school's outhouses when they were picked up and thrown nearly 2/10 of a mile across the railroad tracks. Another girl was cut in half when she was picked up by the tornado and thrown some distance into a steel light post. In all, 33 children were killed at the DeSoto school, the greatest tornado-related death toll ever recorded at a school in U.S. history. Yeah, this is a picture of some of those school kids that were killed.
Oh my God.
After the bodies were pulled from the rubble, so many of the children's parents were injured or also killed that the principal was tasked with identifying many of the students. Also killed at DeSoto was Jackson County Deputy Sheriff George Boland. While on patrol when the storm struck, the tornado lifted him from the ground and he disappeared into the funnel. His body was never found. All told, 69 people would die in DeSoto. And I got more pictures, which once again I'll let the pictures speak for themselves. There's a DeSoto school again. Just complete destruction right there.
Yeah, it's for me, it's the top right one. Like, just there's just nothing there. Like, it's all gone.
It really is. It really is. Now I got another video here. This one, again, this goes back to the other documentary that I was showing.
In an almost forgotten time, people used to watch the sky the same way we watch television and computer screens today. At least Jane Alban Cruz did.
We would sit out on my front porch and make figures out of clouds in the sky. That's all we knew.
But she never saw the mysterious dark cloud that carried away her school, her town, and parts of 3 states.
How I got out, I don't know.
That was actually the introduction from the documentary. So now there's a second clip that's going to be showing up shortly after these pictures, that she talks a little bit more about what happened to her. So here's more pictures of the town of DeSoto. This is where, again, I think out of all the pictures here, the majority of these were the DeSoto school. Yeah, just look at that. Everybody lost their homes within this. They lost everything.
Yeah.
Just absolutely horrible. And I think Sean said something. Let me see what he said. Yeah, he's absolutely right. Just looks like a bomb that hits.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeremy. Yeah,
Hello,
it just looks.
Jeremy?
I mean, what's that?
Oh, I was just saying hello to Jeremy.
I thought you were saying something else, but yeah, but no, in all seriousness, this is truly tragic pictures. Okay, so this has the same survivor, but now this goes into more detail. So this gives me a break once again.
Jane Alban Cruz was then in the 4th grade. The girl who loved clouds was the daughter of the town banker and general store operator. The Albans were one of the prominent families in this village of 1600. At 2:50 that afternoon, Jane was in her 4th grade class. Her future husband, Garrett, was in 8th grade. School would be out in less than 10 minutes. Jane and Garrett were still at their desks when a twister struck.
The next thing I recall, I was in the coal bin, buried in coal.
Through his classroom window, Garrett Cruz watched a girl who was late in returning to class.
I happened to look at the right time. I just saw her for a minute, but I did see her off the ground moving horizontally over the ground. She was later found dead, rolled up in a wire fence which bounded the north side of our school ground.
37 other children died in the twisted ruins of the schoolhouse. Never had a tornado killed so many children in one place in the U.S. And the rest of DeSoto was hit just as badly.
Well, it just looked like it was a mess. You couldn't tell it was DeSoto.
The degree of devastation was just unbelievable. The path at that point was a mile wide. Some places even a little more than a mile. DeSoto was just wiped off the name.
Dolly Swavel's grandmother was blown from her grandfather's embrace.
He said he was holding her with all his strength. And that wind just sucked her right out of his arms.
Okay. Yeah, just truly horrible stuff. Yeah, I think probably next two slides we'll make these the last. After exiting DeSoto, 4 miles to the northeast, the tornado clipped northwest corner of Williamson County, narrowly missing the town of Hearst 4 miles northeast of DeSoto and striking the small village and mining camp of Bush. 2:56 p.m. Significant damage was reported. Several homes were leveled, and pieces of wood were speared into the town's water tower. Heavy railroad axles were reportedly lifted and scattered across the rail yard. The tornado killed 10 people in Bush and the surrounding area and injured another 37, 4 of whom later died. Just southeast of Royalton, the Royalton Colt Road Bridge and a nearby swinging bridge were thrown from their pillars. Dozens of people were killed when about a dozen homes were damaged or destroyed in the rural areas between Royalton and Plumfield. In the small village of Plumfield, the local school was obliterated by the mile-wide tornado. Students Barbara Hammond and Anna Johnson were killed. Sarah Davis, who had been attending a meeting at the nearby church, ran to the school to comfort the children, and tragically, she was killed. She was also killed. Sarah's husband Jefferson was killed moments later when the Davis farm was demolished, and he was thrown hundreds of yards into a nearby field. The tri-state tornado was at about the midway point of its incredible, nearly straight path. Further east, the tornado crossed into Franklin County, narrowly missing the towns of Royalton and Ziegler, devastating rural areas and killing 25 people, 20 of whom perished immediately, and another 5 in the days to come, before heading towards one of the more populated towns in southern Illinois, the large mining town of West Frankfort. So, as you can see right here on the bottom, once again with the timeline. And yeah, like I said, I think we're gonna, now that we pretty much reached the halfway point of this, I think we're gonna end things because again, it's still gonna take a while for me to get through the rest of it. So we'll definitely make this a 2-parter. So let me take this down. But that's not what I meant to do. But quite an incredible story, wasn't it?
Yeah, like in all honesty, like going into this, obviously, like I was saying with Nick earlier, I will look into it a little bit, and of course, came across like some of the stuff which we will go into next week as well, which is actually more sort of from my side, which is actually the paranormal side of it, which actually there is a few accounts which I have found about it, which is really interesting to me, which I'm going to write down in like a full account for next week. But yeah, one thing that I know that somebody had asked earlier about was, so the storm that was the biggest storm in the UK was actually known as the Great Storm of 1987. So that was the storm that I was meaning. It says that this storm caused widespread devastation and is remembered as one of the most powerful and destructive weather events in the UK. Below is a history of the storm, including its formation, impact, and aftermath. I won't go through most of it, but because it's not really necessary for this, because we're not talking about this. But the wind speeds of this, it said the storm brought winds up to 115 miles per hour in some areas, with gusts reaching up to 150 in coastal areas like Brighton and the Isle of Wight. The UK Met Office later confirmed the storm's maximum gust had reached these extreme speeds. And then it said the storm's unusual intensity was partly due to the speed at which the low pressure system deepened, creating a bomb cyclone effect, which intensified the storm rapidly over a very short period of time. So that's what happened over here in the UK in 1987, on October the 15th. And apparently it actually lasted for 24 hours. I didn't know that it lasted for that long.
I mean, I know not necessarily, well, a tornado itself can't last that long, but a supercell that type those can last for hours, if not even days. So that's not surprising to me. Based on the description that you said, especially with the winds that it gave off, that probably at least was in the F2, F3 region, like wind speed. So while not necessarily the top, because as far as I've done my research, the UK in this case, they've never had an EF4 or 5 tornado. The highest you guys have had was an EF3, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, like ours don't tend to, because I don't know what it is. I think it's because we're an island as well. We tend to get like battered by things like, I mean, I know that they said that they put this down as being a hurricane more than it was anything else. But yeah, we tend to get kind of battered by like winds, like really, really powerful high winds, because I guess it's because we're an island.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was quite interesting, to say the least, especially that, you know, the guy that was meant to be forecasting it said that it wasn't going to happen at all.
Right.
Because there was literally no, at that time, I don't think that they had the correct sort of technology to be able to sort of see it in advance.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very strange. But yeah, so I thought for the guy that was asking about what our most intense storm actually was, that was it.
That's crazy. That really is.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sean. I very much appreciate it. Yeah, we'll wrap this up for next week, because that should be enough for that. Of course, also during this time when it's funny. I'll be honest with you. This slideshow I put together, it's not fully completed, but there is some additional information I was going to add, but I didn't have enough time to really put it in. So I'm making this a really long slide. So sometimes I'm kind of glad that I'm able to split these into parts, because the more chance I can split these, the more chance I can finish up with these slideshows. So, and thank you, Farmer. I appreciate that. Good show. Thank you. So yeah, I thought originally this was just going to be a one-night thing, but Nick Files is temporarily back. That's for sure. When that hit Mitch, it was an EF4. Wow, check it out. Jill, you're glad to have Nick Files back. Looking forward to see more of this. And greetings to Sam. Thank you for coming on to the show. To see you all. Yeah, see you next week, Jill. Thanks for tuning in.
Yes, Jill, definitely.
And I gotta just say one other thing about this event that I've been talking about. It's just incredible to me that even though a lot of the survivor interviews, even though they've all passed away since, the fact that this was an event that occurred almost 70 years prior to these interviews, just knowing that so many decades had gone by, that these survivors were now elderly. And you could still see that even decades after it occurred, they were still very upset about what happened.
Yeah, like they've gone through their whole lives, they've probably had, kids, or they've grown up and, they've got their whole families and everything, and they've started a new life or whatever. I mean, they were probably very small when this sort of thing happens.
Yes.
Or very young, like, even if they were like teenage age or something when it happened. But you think to yourself, like, regardless of how young you are, these things can, like, I know that I'm learning all things about memory and stuff at the moment anyway, but memory retains certain things, like, even though you can't in the foreground, is that what I'm meaning? No, but in the forefront of your brain, even though there are moments whereby you can block things out due to things like, say, PTSD and stuff like that, you can block things out, but the thing is those memories and everything are retained in your subconscious mind, regardless of what you try to do, however long you try to sort of shut these moments and emotions down, they will always still be there because your subconscious remembers everything.
Very much so.
Yeah, so when you're at night, you go to sleep, you dream about things, you have nightmares about things, it will always kind of link back to these moments. Or in moments of high anxiety or high stress, like when you kind of reduce yourself to sort of tears over something, you will find that certain memories and situations that have happened to you in the past then tend to sort of be relived or come back. And that's the subconscious kind of going, hey, do you remember that time?
Yeah, very much. Like, you think to yourself that, yeah, a lot of these survivors, they were kids back when this happened.
Mm,
And yes, obviously, again, they may have passed since, but I'm sure most of these survivors, like you said, have become, later became parents, grandparents, and to some extent great grandparents. And
mm.
even though they may have been able to raise families of their own and may have still managed to have a successful life, as they grew older, you could still tell it's no different practically than like suffering, when you're suffering from like I said, PTSD, especially from like in World War II in this case. It's really no different. And not to mention the fact that they knew several family members and friends that were killed in this particular event. It also kind of gives that sense of survivor's guilt. Like, why am I still here, but everybody else died?
Yeah, you kind of have that. I guess, you have moments, especially when, people are only human at the end of the day, and you think to yourself, there's that type that there's a form of guilt there as well. Sometimes people get, people had it in the war, like you were talking about, people are having it in any sort of disaster of this kind. You get that kind of guilt of like, well, my house isn't wrecked, but the person across the streets is completely gone.
Exactly.
Like, how is that? You go to that whole thing of how is that fair?
Exactly. You're absolutely right on that. Farmer Vinderoy just said, I suffer from PTSD from storms, especially when high winds and thunderstorms are going. Well, after what he had gone through, I definitely wouldn't blame him. And I,
Yeah,
again, think that these survivors probably had gone through the same thing because it's not the first time I've ever heard. I've always heard of stories like that where people who had survived, whether it's tornadoes or hurricanes or whatever, they will always say the same thing, saying if it rains or if it gets windy, I get scared immediately. And I don't, and
yes.
unfortunately, especially in this day and age, people would say you're afraid of a little wind or something like that. It's like, show some damn respect to some of these people because they had gone, like in this case of the tri-state tornado, those survivors, they truly gone through hell, so
Yeah, exactly. And I mean,
you can't blame them for the way how they feel.
no, you can't. And I mean, we had so a couple of our team that actually live up north in Scotland. They had an incident last year in October, and they had gone away on holiday, and basically they had had some really severe rain and really, really high winds and a hell of a lot of, like a really, really bad storm. But what they had found out later is that the dam, the people that run the dam at the top of the cliffs there, had opened the dam without warning anybody. So they opened the dam, which obviously flooded everything below.
Jeez.
But the problem, and people said, but people that were still there said that they reported seeing like a 6-foot wall of water coming down towards them, and they didn't know like whether to run or what to do. But like literally they had the phone call to say that everything was just completely gone. Like, the guys up north said that they called me and they were like, everything's gone, our whole house is just completely like, all of the stuff that we had done in our forest and everything, because they're also an Airbnb guys at this point. So they are open to the general public to come in every single year, and they are fully booked throughout the year. And they had to close their Airbnb down, which is their only income. and lose all of their money for the rest of that year. You know, you're thinking Christmas is coming up. You know, they literally lost everything for like nearly like 8 to 9 months. And literally, yeah, it took out, they had like a caravan there that they had made into like another holiday home. They had a cottage that they have made up themselves over time. And then they had their main house as well. And they've got like this whole area, because they're very spiritual individuals. They've got this whole area as well, whereby people can sit outside and they can, you know, if people are really sick or something, they're actually encouraged to go down to these areas and go by the stones and go by all the crystals that they've got there. And, you know, but that was all completely destroyed. So all of these lovely areas that they had for people was just all gone. And you had, like, of course, the caravan was completely leveled to nothing. The cottage was like high water. And then they've got all the animals as well. They lost all of their chickens. Because they had just been completely, like, obviously they drowned, which is absolutely horrific. Like, I know they're just chickens, guys, I get it. Like, people probably think they're only chickens, but they're still living, breathing creatures.
Exactly.
And you just think they've all died, you know. It's awful. And you've got like loads of people whereby the cattle had completely just drowned, like over the road. All their cattle were drowned, and yeah, it was freaking awful. And that's just a little flood, you know.
And I can't even imagine, you know, how bad that alone must have been, you know, knowing just the huge amount of loss of livestock, among other things too. I mean, it's horrible either way.
Yeah, it's horrific, really horrific.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I hate to cut it short, but yeah, I'm gonna end this because we've been on for 2.5 hours, longer than I expected it was gonna be. But this has definitely been really great. I got to just say, Samantha, thank you so much for coming on.
No, it's been really, really good. And like, honestly, Nick, I can tell you, I was saying to my husband, I walked in there earlier, I said, this guy really, really knows what the hell he's doing when it comes down to the Nick files. Like, holy hell, he's really put together like this whole presentation. It's like the way that you've set it all out, Nick, has been absolutely phenomenal. Like, kudos to you for doing all of that. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is. I'm not gonna say this real quick. I'm not gonna lie, but like, when I started working on this slideshow, I only had a few days to really work on it. I mean, I hate how I had to wait a few days before I can get this done. But of course, and I couldn't even get it done on the weekend because obviously it was St. Patrick's Day weekend and I had all these festivities that were going on. So I started like working. I think I started working on originally like on last Wednesday or Thursday, I think. And then I worked on more of it on Friday. I couldn't do I couldn't do Saturday or Sunday. So I know a lot of people have, Jeremy. I know, but at least now I could split this into two so I can keep the show going. But the last time that I worked on, again, not only just minutes ago, you know, before he came on live, but because there was still a lot of work, or I was almost done with it, I had to sacrifice a good portion of my night last night, even though I had to work early the next morning. I had to work. I literally sacrificed my sleep so I can get this done. And you know, it's funny to think, no matter how late it got, I didn't even look at the clock. I didn't care if it was like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I only had like 2 hours of sleep I could put in before getting up, because even then I knew that every time that I did look at the clock to see what time it is, even that, it still would have at least been, I mean, that still would have been 3 or 4 seconds I could have saved and worked on.
Yeah. Yeah, I know the pain. I'm literally like this with editing for TBP. I'm just like, I need to keep going, because otherwise I'm going to be doing this bloody episode for another 10 days, and I don't want that. It's not happening. Yeah.
Thank you, Jill. I really appreciate that. Hey,
Nick,
Gary,
it's amazing. He truly is, and that's why I'm getting him on our show as well. So look out for that as well. Poor Nick is going to be in high demand.
Already, are you kidding? I'm already in high demand.
I know. Not going to be. He's already in highest demand.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, in the end, I mean, in spite that it takes up a lot of my time, I have a lot of fun doing it, and that's all that matters to me. So, but it's good to definitely in this case, I'm looking forward to being on your show too. But it's definitely great to have Nick Files back. That's for sure.
Oh
And
yeah. I've put Nick. It was the only thing I knew for Nick, so I was like, so basically, guys, just to let you know, I've been working for the last sort of few weeks. I've been working on like an intro and a promotional video for the N&W network side of things, and I was like, what can I put in for Nick? Like I was saying to Lo, I was like, what do I put in for Nick? And she was just like, just the Nick Files, I guess. And I'm like, okay, so Nick Files now has to make a full return because it's in the freaking intro.
well, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And
That's all right.
And I also again, I'm sorry, something else just came up in my head when you were talking earlier about because I know we're going to kind of explore more of the paranormal side with this tornado after I finish up the slideshow. I
Yeah.
did, however, find out this happened last night, and I'm not going to lie, I was crushed and I was so upset that I couldn't make it to this because for for starters, throughout Southern Illinois and parts of Southern Indiana, they did have again. This is why I did the slideshow to begin with. They did have their own commemoration event for the 100th anniversary of this tornado.
Oh wow.
Trust me, I really wanted to go to this so bad. They have an exhibit. They have a museum. The Jackson Historical Society was they had this whole display of all these pictures, which fortunately, a lot of the pictures they had on their wall, I think I still had them also on the slideshow. So that does bring some comfort, but still, even though I myself live in Illinois, obviously I'm in Northern Illinois. And as far as distance goes, and even my mom wanted to go to this. She would have loved to have drove me down there. But the problem is to get from Chicago to Murfreesboro, between that's a good. I mean, you have to go through the entire state of Illinois, and that's a good 6.5, 7 hour drive to get down to.
Oh Jesus, yeah, no.
Oh, and it's funny too because everybody thinks of when you think of the state of Illinois, you think obviously of Chicago, the big windy city. But when you go down to Southern Illinois, compared to like what you saw in the early pictures of what some of these towns looked like before they were hit, even today, it's basically it's pretty much a completely different world down there because unlike up here, down there it's mostly farmlands, and even the accent is different in that area. Although not too far from Murfreesboro is a town called Carbondale, which is where Southern Illinois University is located, which I'm sure I wouldn't be the least bit surprised that Southern Illinois probably has had classes like in their history department involving this tornado. Yeah, and Jeremy, funny enough, was just there when he was going down for his bowling league. He went down
the trip, more or less.
I don't know if oh yeah, no. See, if I don't know if he went through Murfreesboro. I know he did go through Marion, and I should have said this to him the other day. I should have said to him, if you were going to go down to Southern Illinois, I should have just gone with you. You should have just dropped me off. Just drop me off and pick me up when you come back.
Jeremy's like
yeah, but I was really disappointed. But the main point of he said he was far from. Yeah, Marion is still. I think from Marion to Murfreesboro, that's still a good hour and a half. Probably still 2 hour drive to get to, even though it's all in Southern Illinois. It's still the two towns are still in two different counties. Let me see here. Just getting back to the comments quickly. Yeah, I was going to ask the same question to Jeremy if they won their bowling tournament. Not done yet. Still have 2 more events for tomorrow. Okay. Yeah.
Well, good luck, Jeremy.
Yeah, good luck. Break a leg, as Kate said.
break a leg. Or don't break a leg. Don't do that.
What I was going to say was, I mean, this is what was the main point of what I wanted to bring up of what happened last night was, although they had this commemoration event down in Murfreesboro, I did find out, and again, this was the part that really hurt me a lot, was that in addition to the event, in a nearby town called New Harmony, which is just right near the southern Illinois-Indiana border, they were having an overnight paranormal investigation at one of the few haunted locations in connection with the tri-state tornado. And when I found that out, I'm like, no! I was so mad. I really wanted to take part of that.
Oh, that's just devastating because, of course, obviously people that watch everything that we do knows that paranormal is one of our biggest topics. Like, we absolutely all love it. So, yeah, to not be able to participate in that.
And I know it, and I understand. I mean, I know a lot of people obviously don't. I mean, a lot of us don't necessarily investigate during the week because, a lot of us have to work during the week and stuff. But honestly, I probably would have been fine with trying to take a few days off from work so I can go down to Murfreesboro and take part. Even though the investigation, I think, only lasted about 3 or 4 hours, it still would have been worth going to be a part of. I think
yeah, definitely. It would still be worth it.
Yeah, I think it was even being covered by the local news station, WSIL, which is the local TV station in Carbondale that they have. So,
wow.
I can only hope that, even though I would have wanted to be there for the actual 100th anniversary of it, I'm just hoping that maybe, and this is something, since Jeremy's in the chat, this is something to throw out for a future investigation location, Jeremy, is that this would be, I'm hoping that this could be another location that maybe at some point in the future we could try to investigate, maybe not in the actual anniversary, but get access to it. Although I still got to look that up. But unfortunately, too, it would be the same thing for Jeremy because he lives in it's like me. He lives more in northeastern Indiana, and this is southwestern Indiana. So once again, that's a far drive for him. But what I can say about what the location is, it was, I mean, in the town of New Harmony, it was, I think it was a school, I think just simply called the New Harmony School, that was originally destroyed by the tri-state tornado. And they did rebuild it afterwards, but not long afterwards, that's when they started getting paranormal activity at the school.
Oh, wow.
I don't think this is a school that's like no longer is in operation anymore, but it is because of this area. I think it is still a historic building. So
yeah,
it obviously, it's more of a historic location more than anything else. So I'm hoping that if they're having this location that happened last night, maybe they'll eventually open it for future investigations because now that's another location's. Yep. See, Jeremy just said it. Investigate places that the tornado struck. Don't see why not. Well, and this building, even though it's not the original building, it has stood for almost 100 years, and they've been having activity going on there for decades. So but yeah, it's really surprising. There's not very many locations involving the tri-state tornado, but this is one of them. Actually, no, you know what? I'll wait for next week to bring them up. I'll wait then because we'll talk more. But I just mainly brought it up because this just happened last night.
Yeah.
Right, much to my disappointment.
Damn it.
But let me see. And Jeremy asked that again. Don't have the volume on, so I'm just reading the captions. Oh, he was talking about about the New Harmony School that I was telling about. Yeah, I think it's called the New Harmony School, Jeremy. I also want to give a quick shout out for something else because there is a Facebook page that did share that location. There is a Facebook page that's called Death Rides the Sky, and this is done by an author by the name of Angela Mason. She wrote a book, in fact, on this tornado. And she's got a full Facebook page about this event. And she was nice enough to actually share this. I told her about the show earlier, and she was nice enough to share our show out on her page. Unfortunately, this was one of those pages I couldn't just post on their page. So I definitely want to give a quick shout out to Angela Mason. Huge thank you to her for sharing out our show. Can't wait to do it again. And Jeremy just said, these are the last two I'm going to read. If people died during a tornado, death along with the energy left over from the tornado, an imprinted disaster, that's a great recipe for a haunting. And Jill then said, oh, check this out. She said it would be good to do a reading of an area or specific spot to see what was happening and see what the spirits have to say about it on the event. Now that, I agree with Jeremy. Now that is a great idea.
Yeah, that would be also having like somebody opening up, like psychic wise, somebody opening up like in the area would be really, really interesting as well.
Well, especially also the cemeteries. I was told down in Murfreesboro and DeSoto, most of the graves they have in the cemeteries, date from 1925. So imagine just the amount of activity from those cemeteries. Wow. Okay, Jeremy. Okay, Jill said, yes, Jeremy, like an imprint, but it's a little different when a spirit of the dead will show you from their perspective. It's a whole different feel. That is also something I'm kind of curious and wanting to kind of experience myself when it comes to this tornado, because I've studied this one for years. And, it would be interesting to experience it from a firsthand account. But honestly, this tornado was just so unique that to this day, I'm surprised there hasn't even been a movie made on this.
Yeah, you would think that it would actually be a very, very good movie to have, really.
If a movie was made on this tornado, I mean, obviously people would think of they would get vibes from the movie Twister. But
Twister, yeah.
Honestly, if they made a movie on this one, I don't think you need to have that vibe from Twister, obviously. So it could basically literally just be a story in of itself. And Jeremy, it's funny. I was just about to say to you, saying we might have to head down to Southern Illinois and Indiana. So yeah, we could try to put something together, get out there. Yeah, I was just about to say that. And also, most recently at the commemoration in the town of Gorham, they just recently put a new plaque in that town to commemorate the event. And Sean makes a good point. I think it'd be better than Twister. It probably would be better than Twister because unlike Twister, this is a true story. This really happened.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, it's like mind blowing that it's all based on real events. Movie idea pending per Nick Files. Am I right? Do it.
I'm not gonna lie. I thought about this years ago, even though it would be impossible to do, because there was at least one part of it is I wanted to make several years ago. I wanted to make a documentary about this tornado, even though obviously, like my own documentary, even though all the survivors have passed away, I'm sure there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of descendants of the survivors that I could interview. But it was not just the survivors and stuff, but what I wanted to do originally was I wanted to not just a typical documentary about the tornado, but I also wanted to try to retrace the entire path of that tornado. I get it. I know it's over 200 miles, but still, to drive through and retrace the entire path of that tornado, it's actually kind of a smart idea for a documentary. And here's the most difficult part that I knew was not going to happen. Although, and yes, this would have a Twister vibe. And of course, I wouldn't have the money to spend it. I thought, who would be great to narrate this documentary to keep like that connection to Twister would be if only there was some way I could afford having Bill Paxton narrate. But of course, he would have been so. I mean, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Bill Paxton, but unfortunately, for starters, he already had a number of movie projects. He was so expensive to afford, but most importantly, sadly, before I could even try to do something like that back in 2017, that's when Bill Paxton passed away. So rest in peace, of course. So we knew that even then, the one thing I knew for sure was there wasn't going to be any way I could have him narrate. But the idea of retracing the path, though, is still not a bad idea, despite how very, very difficult retracing the 234-mile path of this tornado. But it would be interesting either way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Let me just go through this real quick. Oh, Nick messaged me all the towns of the cities, towns affected. I will look into. Okay, yeah. I'll copy with what I presented so far, just the towns themselves, and I'll send a list to you, Jeremy. Could give me something to do after I get done working. Yeah, that would be great. I think that's a great idea. Yeah, Sean does make a good point. I mean, yeah, it may not be based on a true story, but it is based on getting a better warning system, which now that he said that, I think even Twister has a little bit of that connection with the tri-state tornado, because versus the warning like what they had back in 1925, in this case 70 years later in 1996, just how much our weather forecasting had evolved. What's up, Chris? Yes, he is. Nicolas Cage. Okay, just catching up quickly. You could always just ask. You never know. Man, if I was able to, Jill, I definitely would. But sadly, like I said, Bill Paxton's been dead for almost 10 years now.
Yeah, can't ask him now.
Yeah,
I was gonna say Morgan Freeman. Yeah.
Freeman is the best. Yeah, oh man, having him narrate, wouldn't that be cool as hell? I think that would. But anyways, this time I really got to shut this down because we've been on for almost 3 hours. Helen Hunt, God, that's another idea too. All right, I'm gonna have to write that down too. But like I said, Sam, thank you so much for coming on. I was expecting we'd have more show hosts to come on, but at least since you came on, I really appreciate it. Seriously, thank you for this.
No, it's all good, Nick. Like I've really enjoyed talking about this tonight because it's something a little bit different as well. Like usually we're talking about paranormal or we're talking about like crime stuff. So it's something that's a little bit different, which is why I wanted to pop on because, obviously I've kind of had my own fair share of what being near to a tornado actually feels like. And it's something that interests me in general as well because I love anything weather related. The Jeremy Rocks comment didn't even show up on it. Oh.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Sam. You're awesome. Oh, bless your heart. Thank you. I may seem very tired and a little bit kind of out of it today, but because I did a paranormal live feed before this.
Well, the best part is you also made it just in time before I got started because I remember you were saying to me this morning that you weren't sure if you were going to make it, but turned out you did. So that was
so here I am. Yeah.
But I mean, it's something very unique, and it's something that, as far as I know, most of the other podcasts have never really brought it up. So
no,
you hear like even our shows, yeah, we talk about a lot of history stuff, but the tri-state tornado in this case is not really talked about very frequently, especially in this case since this was the 100th anniversary of it. I thought this definitely needs to be brought up, especially including not just the paranormal side of things, but also most importantly the history and tragic side of things.
Yeah, I completely agree.
She said, thank you for sharing your experience in your storm too. We appreciate, and I really appreciate that too. I actually have had a storm experience of my own, but I'm going to save mine for next week. But I will tell you, I will tell you one thing, however, though, and this is kind of a strange coincidence. My encounter that I had with a tornado was also down in southern Illinois, although it was not down in Murfreesboro. It was further up north, but still in Little Egypt, as it's referred, in the town of Alton, which is often regarded as one of the most haunted small towns in America. But yeah, just they definitely get a lot of that type of activity down that southern part of the state.
Yeah, and you're like, oh no, you don't. We're not getting to that. We're not going there.
Oh well, I have video of it too. So, but
Oh
you know,
God.
I'm going to save that experience obviously for next week. But Sam, thank you so much again. I'll definitely have you back on for next part 2 so we can finish this up. And
Awesome.
yeah, and I guess I guess we're gonna. That's all I got to really say. So I'm just
You're like, okay, bye guys.
yeah, for everyone who's been watching, thank you guys so much. Excuse me. It's great to be back. And all right, fine. One more comment here. This is from Jill. Thanks again. Yeah, definitely tune
We'll
in.
definitely tune in next week, second part of Good Night Y'all. I just love the Americans that say y'all, because we literally over here in the UK we say, like, the British never do anything like this. We're always it sounds like we're always really prim and proper and straight laced. Like, we never say anything like that. We're always like, good night everybody and have a lovely evening, and we're like, it just sounds shit.
My brother sometimes talks like that, but for the most part, I don't really. A lot of us don't really. We just have the normal accent.
Yeah.
But again, everyone, thanks in the chat for watching and taking your time to check this out. And we'll
Thank
see
you,
you guys
everyone.
next week. So you guys, and also considering that there is severe weather that is happening throughout certain parts of the state, throughout the country. Most importantly, you guys stay safe out there. You guys will still be around by tomorrow in one piece. So let us know that you guys are safe. So we don't have a repeat of.
I was going to say, if there's a tornado, do not go out in it. Like, don't do that.
Especially now that it's getting dark outside.
What do you mean? In it, bruv. Oh, don't. In it, bruv. Ugh.
But anyways, thanks again, guys.
Have
a great night, and we'll see you guys next week.
See you soon, guys.
Night.
Bye.